Good evening. In compliance with Chapter 551 Open Meetings of the Texas Government Code, I call to order an information session of the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District for Thursday, October 12, 2023 at 6:03 p.m. A quorum of the board is physically present at AISD Central Office to conduct this meeting. This meeting is streaming live on AISD TV and Apple TV, and it's also being broadcast on cable channel 22 through Spectrum, Astound Broadband, and on channel 99 through AT&T UVerse. Closed captioning in English is available on these platforms for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. So welcome and thank you so much for joining us. So we will move to the approval of the agenda. Trustee Hunter, do you have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion by Trustee Hunter and a second by Trustee Zapata to approve the agenda, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion passes unanimously. All right, y'all, today we have a very special event. We have special guests joining us for the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag. We are excited to have the Boy Scouts of America, Troop 5 and 50 of Central Austin here. Let's give them a hand. Welcome. They are, and I got to tell y'all, this is the first time I think we've had students give the pledge in this building, so this is huge. They are learning about the board's work as part of earning their citizenship and community merit badge, and so we would like to ask them to come in front of the dais, which they are. So thank you, Troop 5 and 50. Will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Juro lealtad la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y la república que representar una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos.
Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible. Te honro, bandera de Texas, te juro lealtad, Texas, un estado para Dios, uno y indivisible.
Thank you very much.
Good job.
All right. Thank you so much. So now the next thing is an opportunity for the public to share comments with the board. This time allows speakers to comment publicly on any topic of their choosing. We have time for up to 60 speakers. As a reminder, the district continues to provide time during the regular voting meetings of the board to hear from the public about agenda items for consideration and vote. This is an opportunity for the board to take part in listening to our community. While we wish we could respond or provide feedback, we are really required to limit our questions to requests for clarification or follow up directly to the administration. So members of the public wishing to participate in public comment called a dedicated AISD phone line in advance of the meeting to audio record their remarks. So we will now play the recorded messages, so please listen carefully.
This is Sharon Vane, parent of a Bowie student and a 2022 graduate. I'm calling about Agenda Preview Item 12.1, which covers the use of chaplains in our schools. I urge you to be crystal clear about what is going to be allowed in AISD, and I urge you to ensure that the counselors who provide services to our students receive training commensurate with mental health professionals. Please ensure that our district's policy does not leave open a loophole to use a chaplain with minimal training as a volunteer school counselor who would replace the functions of a professional or paraprofessional. At a time when these services are needed more than ever for our children, the district must ensure that those services are provided by those with training that aligns with best practices for the industry. We also should ensure that in keeping with the district's Religion in Schools handbook and federal law, the district does not allow even the appearance of endorsing one religion over another. Thank you.
This is Vicki Kuthrell. I'm associated with Murkison Middle School. We spoke at September board meeting and addressed our concerns about the Life Skills program. We are asking for your help in establishing compliance with some of our students. ARDs are not being conducted in accordance with guidelines. IEPs are not having least restrictive opportunities. If the trustees are now in charge of monitoring changes for the school district, as suggested by the Lone Star Group governance guidelines, we request that MMS Life Skills Program be the first school to be monitored, and ask that we receive the support that we are entitled to. Thank you.
Okay, so this concludes public comment. Trustees, are there any questions or clarifications? None? Okay. All right, so thank you, trustees. So as a reminder, please feel free to share any general comments or questions with the board by email at trustees@austinisd.org. So at this time, we would like to acknowledge the pain that the Austin ISD community is feeling due to the terrorism and violence in Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank. Our hearts ache for the children, the families, and civilians who have been and continue to be brutally harmed and killed. We know many in our community are from or have family and friends in this region, and to you especially, we want to extend our deepest concern and care. Austin ISD is a beautifully diverse community, and these events impact our students, families, and staff with origins across the globe. Austin ISD now more than ever is committed to the values that bind us. Values such as peace, unity, and respect for the dignity of all human life. These values are critical guides as we try to make sense of and cope with the effects of the horrific violence we have witnessed, the impact of war, and the overwhelming emotions many in our community are feeling. As a No Place for Hate school district, AISD engages in intentional work to create inclusive environments where students and staff feel safe and welcome no matter their religion, cultures, or identity. Discrimination, prejudice, and hatred have no place in our schools or in our communities. We know that students and staff will need time and space to process these events, both inside and outside the classroom. The Office of Teaching, Learning, and Leading has provided resources to Austin ISD counselors and educators with guidance for talking with students and helping them discuss these painful events. Community partners, counselors, and licensed mental health professionals are always available to support our students. Students may ask any teacher to access these services. Families may also contact one of our many community partners that provide grief services, which are listed on our website at www.austinisd.org/family-support/guide. And this information will also be disseminated to the public. In addition, the City of Austin has recently launched the We All Belong website, which links to a reporting tool and additional resources for people experiencing discriminatory incidents. So please join me and the rest of the board in sending thoughts of comfort to those affected around the globe and in our own AISD community, and let us continue to stand together against terroristic acts and violence of any kind. Thank you very much. So next we have a legislative update, and I believe Dr. Regis, okay, Trustee Boswell is zooming in, so thank you, Trustee Boswell, and welcome. Can you provide us with an update?
Yes, I am happy to give an update. The third called special session began Monday, 3 days ago, October 9th. There are 4 items on the governor's call, including education freedom, legislation providing education savings accounts for all Texas school children. ESAs are another form of taxpayer-funded private education. So Senate Bill 1 proposes a $500 million education savings account voucher program. The bill permits transfers into the fund with $500 million estimated for one fiscal year, and it could grow beyond that estimate. The bill is being debated on the Senate floor, was debated on the Senate floor today. Senate Bill 2 provides a $5.2 billion amount for public schools that increases the basic allotment by 75%, increases compensation for teachers by $10,000 in school districts with 5,000 students or fewer, and a $3,000 increase per teacher in districts with an enrollment of more than 5,000 students. This increase would be a one-time payment in 23-24 and then be made permanent in salary in 24-25 and after. It doubles the school safety allotment and takes the per student allotment from $10 to $20, the per campus allotment from $15,000 to $30,000. It increases funding for school safety by $400 million statewide. And it would increase the funding amounts for the teacher incentive allotment so that half of teachers in the state could earn a TIA designation. Senate Bill 2 was passed out of the Senate Finance Committee on October 10th, on Tuesday. And the governor's call does not include the issues that are the subject of SB 2, although he could broaden the call during the period. The House has not filed similar bills, and the House is adjourned until October 16th. Our legislative committee met and didn't change any of our legislative priorities. We've been collaborating with other districts across Texas to coordinate messaging about school finance and about taxpayer-funded vouchers. And ACPTA has also been very engaged and active at the Capitol. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Boswell. Trustees, do you all have any questions or comments related to that? All right. Thank you. Okay, so next we have our information reports and updates. So we're trying something a little different here. As you all know, that the board is going through Lone Star governance. We actually have Ashley Paz here with us tonight, who's our coach, and we decided that we were going to start just putting time limits or time guidance for each agenda topic. So for each topic, I'm gonna just say how much time we have. So for this one, we have 30 minutes for this update. We've got a little clock there, so we're gonna be watching the clock. And let's see if we could stay under 30 minutes. Also for comments, I'm going to be asking you all we're gonna kind of go in order. And see how that works. So I don't know which side of the dais I'll start, but it depends on who I make eye contact with. It looks like Trustee Gonzalez may be it. So today we have 30 minutes. I don't think it's going to take that long, but let's try. So really one of the most important duties of a school board is to hire a superintendent to lead the district. Austin ISD trustees are currently hosting listening sessions and outreach sessions to gather community input regarding this important decision to hire a superintendent. We are looking for feedback on our superintendent profile, which can be accessed on our website. If you just do a Google search for Austin ISD superintendent search, that should take you to that website. We welcome all input, so please consider sharing your thoughts at one of our upcoming community conversations by completing our superintendent profile survey or by emailing trustees@austinisd.org. So tonight is really an opportunity for the trustees to discuss publicly the profile and process with each other, share any feedback and thoughts. As part of our commitment to meeting efficiencies, we'll also, like I said, be trying this new process for trustee feedback. And by the way, as I call on you, you're welcome to pass or share no comment at the time, so do not feel compelled to speak. But if you have something to say, we definitely want to hear it. Once we have all shared, we can check if anyone has a follow-up to provide. So, Trustee Gonzalez, can we start with you tonight?
Sure. So I was lucky to go and speak with the Equity Advisory Committee this week, as well as the Community Bond Oversight Committee and 2 different PTAs. And I know that Trustee Zapata and I are planning to also discuss with the Aikens community next week at our jointly hosted Lead with Love meeting. I've heard a lot of different things. Something that I'm curious about, or I have a question about, is if we do receive feedback on suggested changes to the profile that we developed last spring, what would be the process for incorporating said feedback into a new profile, and when timeline-wise would we be looking to make those revisions and rehash those? Or I know that we've all received some written feedback through email, but that's what I'm wondering. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a good question. Yes, we have received a few emails, and we are collecting those. Just so the public knows, as trustees are going out and doing this engagement, most of the engagement is just one trustee with one of our committees or designated a group in the community, and we are recording our notes, and then our board legal counsel is then compiling those for us to all look at together. And so as you're getting feedback on the actual superintendent profile, I can't recall, do we have a question? Is that one of our questions? Okay, so we can record that in there into the Google document. When you hit send, it's going to go to Christine, and that's how it will be captured. And in terms of the timeline, if we feel like we need to go back and revisit and potentially make changes to the profile, I think that's something that the governance committee will need to discuss. We'd probably have to do that in November. Would be the earliest, since we're already in October. So I hope that answers the question. But thank you for talking to our communities on that. Trustee Hunter, anything?
Thank you. I met this week with the Austin Area Alliance of Black School Educators, who provided input on our superintendent search. I received a lot of good suggestions, a lot of good information, and one of our questions on there is there a deal breaker? And there was most definitely a couple of things that they wanted to include, and so I've submitted those, and we'll send those on to Ms. Padilla. Thank you.
Vice President Foster.
I'm enjoying the process of hearing from our community. So I was just looking at I have literally 4 pages of bullet point comments from one of the sessions, and a couple more to go, and we're passing them on, collecting them all. Hopefully we'll code them so we get a really good, strong community sense. And, sort of so far, so good in terms of community feedback.
Great, thank you. Secretary Boswell, any comments?
Yes, I had to cancel the engagement I had scheduled this week. I have COVID. So I've postponed some of the things I was planning to do, but have a lot of campus-based opportunities that I'm going to get to go and listen to people. And then also have connected with the local chapter of the retired educators. So they're going to weigh in, and we have a lot of community groups that we'll be meeting with as well. Arts groups, Success by Six, a bunch of different organizations and people with specific interests who we've reached out to. So I really look forward to listening and to hearing what all my colleagues bring back from all the different places we're going. So we can have that input. Thanks.
Thanks, Secretary Boswell. Trustee Zapata?
I will be able to do my first meeting on Monday, so I'm waiting. I'm excited to go and listen, and I will be doing several of them. So, but I've heard so far that they appreciate the extent that we are going to get as many community involvement, participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Zapata and Trustee Whitley Chu.
I'm looking forward to continuing to go out in the community with PTAs and CACs and even people who are pulling me aside and giving me their feedback at all different kinds of events. We are really listening to you, and we appreciate it. And we're getting emails from people. You can email your trustee, or you can email trustees@austinisd.org, and that's a really good way to get your voice heard and really think out what you want to say.
For sure. And if folks are wondering what this profile is all about, because we're talking about it as if everyone knows, it's on board docs. It's also, like I said, on that website. But we went through a process this spring, as you may recall, where we actually worked with GR Recruiting, and we surveyed our community. We did a series of focus groups and listening sessions at that time as well, and the board actually formally adopted a superintendent profile at that time. Then after we did that, we decided that we needed a little bit more time, and we actually extended interim superintendent Segura's contract through the end of this school year. So, but there is a process, there's a timeline. We really do want it. We do value what the community is bringing to us. I do want to reiterate, please email the trustees. If you want us to, talk to your PTA, your group, whatever, that's always available. I know our trustees are very active out in the community and incorporating this into their already planned meetings. And but really what I just want to make really clear, if you look at the profile, I don't want to read it all out to you, but we have it in English and Spanish. But I really do want to talk about so many of these bullet points are grounded in our commitment to student outcomes. And we really are looking for, and I'll speak for myself. Well, I don't need to because we voted on this. But, but the first one really, I'm just going to read this one aloud because it's so important. The AISD seeks a superintendent who is able to lead a large organization dedicated to achieving ambitious goals that will increase student achievement across all demographic groups, with a track record of making strategic decisions that consider both immediate needs and long-term goals of creating systems and budgets to ensure long-term success. And this fall, you're going to see the board engaging in some work with tweaking our scorecard. And then in the spring, we're actually going to do a more intense revision of our scorecard with our Lone Star governance coach and the community. So I'm really excited about that process. But all of the work that we're doing, the decisions we're making with this search is like finding somebody who's going to be able to help us meet these high goals. And I think, understanding the culture of this school district and this city and the values that we hold so dear. So I'm going to do one more line, one more chance. So if you'd like something to say, Phil, this is your opportunity. Hunter? Okay, Trustee Hunter.
If we can let the public know when the tool to be able to comment is supposed to come out, I believe, next week.
Yes. Yes. Allie, is there anything you'd like to say about that? Trustee Ghilarducci, would you like to say anything about? Or Trustee? Chief. Whatever. Chief. President, Chief. Thank you.
Good evening, trustees. Yes, so we will be using our tool the community may be familiar with called Thought Exchange. It's a tool we used in last spring for the budget engagement. So we'll have that. We're going to have those community meetings starting, and we'll be launching it with those, and we'll disseminate them through newsletters, text families, things like that.
Thank you. Yeah, and we are going to have a few Zooms that are going to be open. Are those open to, I can't recall, the whole community or just staff?
We'll have two back-to-back English-Spanish on 2 different nights for community members, and then we're going to have 3 staff sessions. We try to put some right after school for those elementary and secondary teachers around the time they get out so they don't have to hang out too long, and then we did one later in the evening for those that maybe want to get home and have dinner first.
Okay. Trustee. Thank you. All right. Trustee Zapata, was there anything else that you wanted to add? Okay. Trustee Whitley-Chu. Okay. Last call. All right. 10 minutes and 28 seconds. We did it. Moving on. All right. Now we actually would love to talk more about the Lone Star Governance implementation timeline. This is something that we have been really working intensely on. So Ashley Paz is our consultant with the Council of Great City Schools. You're joining us tonight as we go through the implementation timeline. As part of the Lone Star Governance, or LSG, process, a district would create and approve an implementation or continuous improvement timeline that lists the deliverables and needs to be accomplished through Lone Star Governance. So really appreciate this. I wanted to let you all know, too, that this item is currently on our agenda preview tonight, but following tonight's discussion, we will actually move this item to be voted on next month, okay? Because it's so intense, we really want to make sure that we're in complete alignment with, the milestones that we're going to be held accountable for. And we also want to make sure there's time for our community to understand, because there are changes that are going to be happening. And it's really important that we kind of go into this knowing what's coming, and answer folks' questions and things like that. So we have scheduled 30 minutes to discuss this tonight, and we'll post any changes to what's on board docs based on tonight's discussion for our November meetings. So trustees, are there any questions before we begin? All right, Ms. Paz, go for it.
Oh, hi trustees, it's good to see everyone again this afternoon. So thank you for introducing me. I'm Ashley Paz. I'm Lone Star Governance Coach for Austin ISD. I'm very excited to be able to share this document with you. I prepared a presentation that just gives kind of a high-level overview, but of course the detailed document is on board docs, and so trustees can pull that up, and the community at large can as well. So just an introduction. So last month, the board approved a negotiated agreement with TEA to address the systemic noncompliance with regard to special education services. This agreement highlights 3 main areas of board focus. So first is implementing the Lone Star Governance Framework to the level of meets focus as measured by the Lone Star Governance Integrity Instrument, which I believe is also available on board docs for anyone in the community who would like to review that document. Next, the board is to spend an average of 50% of its quarterly meeting minutes in their board authorized public meetings. These are any meetings that are not hearings or sessions that are required by law, and so meetings that the board authorizes, where the board controls the agenda, whether it is the full board or a smaller group of board members. So 50% of board-authorized public meetings spent on student outcome-focused minutes and minutes spent monitoring compliance for special education services. And finally, there were a number of board policies that the agency has mandated to be moved under the superintendent's authority, which is my understanding your policy committee is already on top of those. So I want to speak more specifically to the Lone Star governance priorities. To comply with the order from TEA and demonstrate a good faith effort, the board is expected to implement the Lone Star governance framework, which includes these following high-level deliverables, among others. On the following slides, I will share more detail about each of these and some of what is entailed to complete those tasks. So again, the first is spending 50% of board-authorized public meetings on student outcomes and special education compliance monitoring. Next is updating the board's goals. So right now you have a scorecard. So updating that scorecard so that it is in alignment with what Lone Star Governance calls goals and constraints. So goals are specific student outcome goals that focus on what students know or are able to do. And constraints are specific to operational actions or class of actions that says this is what the superintendent shall not do. And it's really important to understand that that is saying what the superintendent shall not do, not because we like to be mean to the superintendent or tell them what not to do, but actually that's how the board protects the community's values. You protect the community's values by putting boundaries around them. And we make it specific to the superintendent because that's the one employee of the district who oversees the management of the district. So updating the board's goals and constraints to align with the LSG framework, and then finally adopting a board operating procedure manual. So there are actually a lot of parts of implementing LSG, but this is the one that TEA specifically outlined in the order, so I wanted to make sure to lift that up as one of the top priorities for the board. So first, as we get into it, how do we create the conditions for 50% time use? So the recommendations that I have provided on the implementation timeline prioritize the following the following elements of implementing LSG. So first is conducting an agenda evaluation and reviewing the school year 23-24 meeting calendar. So this is just where my recommendation is that the officers do this because the board president is the one who actually owns the agenda on behalf of the board. So going through that and looking at each of the different elements of the agenda, and we actually have a process that I'll take you through. It's called the agenda diet. And so we literally put your agenda on a diet to make it thinner, to streamline it. The next is, and also doing the same with your meeting calendar. I will be surprised if you actually have a lot of meetings that you need to pull from the calendar, but it's always a good idea just to look at them just to make sure. The next is probably also the most, it's the hardest pill to swallow for a lot of boards. And I'll tell you that when I was a board member in Fort Worth a couple of years ago, this was a hard pill for me to swallow too. So know that this is coming from somebody that's been there. And that's temporarily pausing all committee work. Again, this is a recommendation. These recommendations are because this is the heaviest lift from the order. Getting to the 50% time use threshold by January, which is what the order expects, is really, really hard. In fact, as I previously shared, most boards that go through this work, it takes them over a year to get to that place where they're spending consistently 50% of their time in board-authorized public meetings. So a big ask requires big work. And so I just wanted to highlight that and just name the elephant in the room that it's going to be a hard one, but I have every confidence that you'll be able to accomplish it. So boards that have met that 50% threshold in a short period of time, these are actually some of the tasks that they have taken on initially. And again, it's also just a temporary pause. And I'll share more about that in just a moment. So temporarily pausing all committee work. Next, implementing the time use tracking system that, and I've developed an instrument that Austin ISD specifically can use that actually takes into account all of the different pieces of the TEA order, because they actually provide you with a couple of different things that are not typically included, such as monitoring special education compliance. That wouldn't normally be included in student outcomes focused minutes, but they're going to allow it in this one, which is actually a great thing for helping you get to that 50%. And then aligning the scorecard with the LSG standards, which we've already shared that, and then updating the monitoring calendar, primarily to include those special education compliance monitoring sessions as well. Adopting board constraints and updating the board operating procedure manual. So as I mentioned earlier, you have superintendent constraints. There's also a tool called board constraints that boards will implement. So if we're putting boundaries on operational actions to protect the community's values, the board will also adopt board constraints that are essentially norms, behavioral norms that say this is how we're going to engage with each other and maintain trust as a group, which I have every faith that this board is going to be able to come up with those quite easily, if you don't already have them to begin with. And then finally, refining the progress monitoring practices. And this actually came from some of the conversations that we have had in the past when we did our 2-day training together. One of the big conversations that we had was around progress monitoring of those student outcome goals and those constraints. Having a training that helps you understand more deeply what level of data should you be receiving and what kind of questions can you be asking to make sure that you are being most deliberate about the work. And again, I mentioned so one of the pieces we mentioned was the committee diet. I also wanted to share in in my presentation here, so after pausing your committees, we actually recommend a process for developing a committee diet where you actually review the committee work, look at how each committee is spending time, and ensuring that the committees are actually doing work in the way that is most productive and effective for the board. And so this slide kind of outlines the difference between those. So in a traditional committee structure, we have committees that traditionally provide advice to staff, and I'm not suggesting that this is the way that your committees work. This is boards in general. Provide recommendations to staff or direction to staff on how to do the work. They are standing committees that meet in perpetuity. Also, there are generally very few expectations as far as how the committee reports back to the board. And then those committees rarely have clear deliverables that they're expected to produce for the board. And a lot of the work of traditionally structured committees is actually that they lack structure, and that lack of structure actually creates mission drift, where a committee might be developed initially to do really good work on behalf of the board, but then over time transition to deal with pet projects and specific interests of the people who are on those committees. So it's just a good practice to go through that, and actually, and we have a recommendation for how committees can be more effective. So first, be clear that the committee only ever advises the board, not staff. And that using an ad hoc structure where there is a specified time frame for which the committee will conduct their business within. Give them clear expectations about the frequency of their reporting back to the board. Clearly define deliverables that they should be producing in that time frame. And then the point of all of this is that this new way of doing committees actually gives a clear scope that keeps the committee focused, and that so that they're actually achieving the priorities of the board. All right, next, updating the board's goals and constraints. So President Singh spoke earlier that we'll have an initial kind of reformat or retooling is the language we're using for the board goals. This is essentially taking the scorecard that you have now and just reformatting it so that it fits within the framework of LSG. Right now, I think you have 19 total priorities, and so that it might entail removing a couple of those. Those are decisions by the board, and the board has to make those decisions. I'm not going to tell you what to keep and what to get rid of, but I will help facilitate that conversation. So this is just streamlining and maybe consolidating a little bit, but not actually adding anything new. In order to add anything new, to develop new priorities, updating targets, you actually have a responsibility to go back to the community and have a really robust process where you go into the community and really understand what the vision and the values are prior to adopting those goals and those constraints. Because as I said, goals represent the vision, constraints represent the values, or protect the values. So retooling this fall, making bigger adjustments would happen in the spring. And that would come after doing the community engagement, plus giving the district time to perform a root cause analysis or comprehensive student needs assessment, really dig into the data. And the organization that I'm here representing, Council of the Great City Schools, will be providing some support on that end as well, just from a capacity building standpoint. And then the final piece of this is the board operating procedure manual. So the board operating procedure manual is one of the pieces that TEA lifted up specifically in the order as this is something that needs to happen. I haven't spoken to them about why that was a priority, so I don't know, but I can imagine that. So what I do know about the board operating procedure manual, it helps you create the conditions so that you can be the most focused. They didn't provide any specifications for which board policies you should be adjusting. It really is just creating that review and putting it into a public-facing document that is accessible, easy to read, easy to access for the community, that clearly states, this is how the board engages with each other, this is how we engage with the community, this is how we engage with the staff. And you already have this, essentially, it's your B policies. So I would take you through the process, which I've laid out. Here. So impanel the committee. A committee would be the ones to kind of quarterback the work, have that committee survey the board to ensure that everyone's voice is heard in it, and then let them do the review, report back to the board, and then make those recommendations for the final conversation with the board. All right. Quickly, I want to lay out what to expect for the board over the next year. I'm just covering the first 4 quarters, and we're not going to go into a whole lot of depth about them because you've got the document which you can read, but I do want to just lift up. Quarter 1, you could expect conducting that agenda evaluation, pausing board committees, retooling the scorecard, updating the monitoring calendar, updating the policies, beginning the time use, progress monitoring training, developing the board-led community engagement plan, and developing that board operating procedures manual. That's a lot of work, and that's 3 months. And so it may only be a handful of bullet points, but that's a lot of work, and it's going to require a big lift from this board, and it's also occurring during a very busy time of the year for a lot of families. And so one of the most important things for me tonight was to just stress the importance of the consideration. I'm really glad that we have stretched out the time frame for you to adopt this, because I want to make sure that everyone understands exactly what is before you, especially in this first quarter. In quarter 2, this is really focusing on the board's responsibility of representing the vision and values of the community. So meeting that 50% time use threshold by the end of January, conducting the board-led community engagement, developing the superintendent plan. So in November, you'll decide how you're going to move forward with the superintendent search. If you decide to move forward, then this will be the time when you start to put that plan together. And then updating your goals and constraints, your constraints, and their targets, and having that community feedback and that student performance data that the staff will be working on. And then finally, just keep focusing on improving your progress monitoring process. In quarter 3, things start to slow down for you a little bit. This is where we begin just maintaining the progress that you've made and sustaining that work that's been done. So in this part, we would keep that try to maintain that 50% threshold, making any final adoptions of those, or actually adopting a budget that is aligned with those goals and constraints that you've adopted, and then doing the policy diet process. So actually reviewing all of the policies, which is a big lift, but it will feel like a walk in the park after all of this. And then finally in quarter 4, potentially hire a new superintendent, reinstate your committees after conducting a committee diet, establishing a regular cadence of board-led community engagement, and then adopting a superintendent evaluation that is aligned with those new goals and constraints, and your new permanent superintendent.
Thank you. It is a lot. It is a lot, board. You all doing okay? Okay. And by the way, Boy Scouts, y'all are doing a great job. Trustees, are there any are there any questions? And this time I'm going to start on this side of the dais. So I'll start with you, Trustee Whitley Chu.
Yes, I have a question about when we're looking into committees. You know, you talked about longstanding committees that have these traditions that are kind of running for, no reasons and that you've seen before. Is it possible that you will find that our committees are effective?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If that's the case, then definitely keep your committees. It's just important to understand how much time those committees are using and ensuring that their processes are in fact effective and that they are focusing on the accomplishment of the board's goals and protection of their constraints.
Thank you. Trustee Zapata?
I have no questions.
All right. Secretary Boswell?
Yes. Hi, Ashley. Thank you for being with us tonight. I want to just say I share appreciation for the decision to slow this down a little bit and not adopt it tonight. So we're adopting a thoughtful plan, not a fast plan. And I really appreciate the breathing room for that. And I know the work that Superintendent Segura is working on this as well to really bring some detail into how we get to those things, which I know is one of the skill sets he brings to the administrative work. And I appreciate him bringing it to this, our plan together. So I do have a question for you, Ashley, and just a comment for my colleagues. I know that one of our obligations is to get to a meets focus and maintain it. And I want to be really sure that is, since that's one of our main obligations under the TEA order, that we lay that out really clearly in that top section that goes down quarter by quarter and in the plan itself. And I know we have to get to that within 2 years, but really be thoughtful about how quickly we can get to that so we can get, the number of quarters that are at least required, going, moving toward accomplishing everything we need to accomplish as we move toward establishing this governance structure.
Yeah, and so the plan actually, in the actual plan document itself, so all of the deliverables that are outlined is actually accomplishing all of the things that get you to that meets focus. The only things that are outside of the meets focus are the ones that are already required by TEA. Like, for example, the 50% threshold is actually a master's focus expectation, but it is obviously included for that reason.
About what I'm seeing, and I appreciate that, and I know when you read the detailed plan, we see that, but I know also, that 60% point threshold, for example, is a meets, and I'd love to kind of lay that out in the quarterly progress as well, to be really sure that we are seeing it in both places, because I think that's such an important milestone as well.
Thank you. I guess it's my turn. So thank you, Secretary Boswell, for that question. And so it's an overall meets. That's what's in the TEA order, not meets for each section. All right, thank you. Vice President Foster.
I'll be as brief as possible. The enduring irony of this all is that as we think and as we are deliberate in this counts as adult behaviors, and so every second we think about this counts against our meeting these expectations. It is an unfortunate situation to have a body not able to think and deliberate in a way that seems appropriate. For instance, the very decision to be transparent with our community and present this tonight is counting against us as we are being measured as efficient or not efficient. So I will do my best to be compliant to this process, even as much of it leaves me dumbfounded.
Thank you. Trustee Hunter.
Thank you. I have a couple of clarifications, and I want to be really clear. So I guess I'll start first with the pausing the committee meetings, not committee work. And what I mean by that is we have a legislative committee. We could pause those meetings all we want to. We cannot pause that work. We are currently in a special session with another promise to come. That work has to continue. So I just want to make sure that we are clear about pausing the meetings, not the work.
So I'm not sure what you mean by that. So when I think of committee work, I think of what actually happens in the meetings. So I think what you're asking is like going to the Capitol, doing that
Yes,
advocacy.
that work.
Absolutely, you should be doing that. And as a former school board member, I would be doing that whether I was on the committee or not. And so this is definitely not a suggestion to not do that work.
Okay, excellent. And then as board operation procedures, I saw that was on there. That work has already begun. I'm actually part of that subgroup that we pulled together on that information. So a lot of work has been done. Some of that we've actually looked at people on the LSG leaderboard and what their board operating procedures like. What I'm not clear about is the target date or the timeline around that.
Yeah, so on the timeline, and I'm going to go off the top of my head. So I think we've got the committee, we call the committee in November, and then make the recommendation. So the committee meets a couple of times, makes a recommendation to the board for discussion in December, and then the board votes on it in January.
So now you've just triggered another thought in my mind.
Okay.
That was not a question. I only had those two. And we are at, so I think we're still doing good. The pause comes then when?
So right now it's scheduled to begin in November. So that is all of your current standing committees. So I think the language is actually any legally required standing committees.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you'll have, because I guess I'm not able to delineate between what is a standing and non-standing committee.
Yeah, and I don't have a list of the committees that you have right now, so that's part of the work.
So I mean, like policy committee, those just kind of seem like integral to the work, right? We don't have like a committee for potluck lunches or the mayor's pride parade or something. I mean, that's not a committee. Like our committees are like, they do the work. So I guess probably that's one of the first things I would like us to take a look at, because I mean, we don't have a lot of pork when it comes to things like that. Like if we're meeting, it's because it's important.
Yeah, and so the question isn't whether or not the committees are important. It is how they are utilizing board meeting time.
You're gonna have to help me with that. Maybe not now because we're at 28:41.
Yeah.
But any meeting, I work a job. I have 2 children. If I'm going to a meeting, it's for the reason that I was elected, the outcomes of students.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to a meeting for fun. So we're going to need to look into that a little bit more so that I can have a clear understanding of that. Because again, this is for me this year, I don't know about anybody else, this is a 50-hour volunteer position in addition to putting food on my table. So if I'm in a meeting, it darn well is there's children and publicized, but it's I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trustee Hunter.
Thank you.
Trustee Gonzalez.
I see we're at 29:26, so I'm just going to hold my question in my heart. Thank you.
Now I'm curious. You can ask it because we were good on the other parts. Okay. Trustees, any other second thoughts, questions? Trustee Boswell? Okay. All right.
And so one other thing I want to lift up. So between now and you actually having to vote on this, we will meet individually, and you will have an opportunity to provide direction on what stays, what goes. This is still very much a living document.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Paz. Appreciate your being here. All right. Our next item is part of our commitment to discuss student achievement on scorecard items 11 and 12, Title I, teacher and non-teaching staff retention. Thanks, Boy Scouts.
Thank you all.
Oh, before you go, I forgot. I wanted to just recognize we have with us, the troop leader for the Boy Scouts is Texas Supreme Court Justice Brett Busby. So thank you so much for your service and for being here. All right. They're all like, I'm never going to be a board member. We don't even get paid for it. That's right. I know. All right. So anyway, our next item is related to the Title I teacher retention and the non-teaching staff retention as well. And that was selected as one of our scorecard metrics because we knew that had a direct impact on student outcomes. If there's not a highly qualified teacher there, there's not going to be a whole lot of learning going on. So we're tracking that closely. As part of our work for finding meeting efficiencies and increasing transparency to agenda items, we actually uploaded our first video presentation for this item. And I got to say, you set the bar very high on that one, Ms. Hosick. But the video is on the agenda item as a link and as an attachment. And so this will be in place of a formal presentation. So what our hope was, as we were talking about putting this as a video, we actually think more people will access this information. I really do honestly believe that, because it's just, if someone's only interested in that item, they don't have to go through hours of board meeting to get to that item. It's right there, easy to find. I encourage people to watch this, share this with your CACs, with your PTAs if you want, and it's just really, really good information, gives you good insight into what's all the great things that are happening with regards to staff retention, and as well as some of the areas that we have challenges in. So we also have uploaded the trustee questions that were asked on the video on board docs related to this agenda item. So again, this is to reduce time on the board, on the dais asking these questions, but these questions are available. Trustees receive this video in advance, and we had the time to actually ask the administration for clarification questions. So moving forward, we hope this format will allow trustees and the public more time to review the presentations and reserve the board meeting time for asking questions and sharing comments. The board can still talk about it tonight on the dais. We're not precluded from that. So, Mr. Segudo, would you like to add anything?
No, thank you, President Singh. Yes, it was our first video. Brandy Hosick and the Talent and Strategy team did an incredible job. So thank you for taking this on and being the first ones to get that out the door and on board docs. Certainly very much appreciate the work. I think it turned out well. I think the other chiefs and the teams are now, trying to figure out how to meet that high bar, but we're going to get it done. So very excited that was able to work out well for our trustees in this first round. So yeah, we're available to answer any questions. Chief Hosick is here, and so I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. So trustees, now's the time. We have scheduled 10 minutes. Dr. Reach, that's not enough time. Okay, but we'll try.
We all watched the video.
Yeah, we watched the video, but I do want you guys to speak the questions that are in your heart, to use Trustee Gonzalez's, because this is one of our scorecard items, and we have the experts here, so I would really appreciate hearing your questions. Our goal tonight is monitoring, and feel free to focus. I would like you to focus on the data presented, asking questions about who, what, why, and how. And we will start this time with Trustee Gonzalez.
Sure, thank you. So I can draw, my own conclusions, and I was able to watch the video, and thank you for that. And I also really love that idea going forward as a time-saving measure. My question, I guess, is as we know, our budget calendar is being moved up, and so as we start to think about how to replicate some of the success that we saw come out of the last budget cycle, related to teacher and staff retention. What do you anticipate might be some considerations going forward to continue that?
Good evening, Board of Trustees, President Singh, Mr. Segura. Thank you, Trustee Gonzalez, for the question. We still have a lot of work to do. In collaboration certainly with Education Austin and with our board, passed a historic compensation package in the last budget. We have a great challenge before us to find creative ways to achieve that again, because we still have work to do. We still have ground to make up to remain competitive. It becomes harder every single year to recruit and to retain our teachers and our staff, especially in a city like Austin that becomes more expensive every year as well. So we do have work to still do. Mr. Ramos and I are already, plotting is a strong word, but we are already planning on how we can possibly, be just as bold once again without, obviously we have a budget deficit to work out of, and so how do we do that without just compounding the issue? We are certainly exploring different options. I do believe that we will have to continue to be creative in those. One of our big goals is, again, to try to make major strides to recruit special education teachers. Again, still continues to be a challenge for us, and bilingual teachers as well. So to make another stride, especially in those areas. And we are spending a lot of time right now really ideating on how we can further incentivize our staff on Title I campuses.
Thank you. Trustee Hunter?
No questions, just that I heard Chief Ramos has hired Robert Rodriguez for his, and so, I'm kidding. But no questions.
Vice President Foster.
So one of the things I really appreciate about all the work you all have been doing is sort of teasing out the nuance so that we begin to see, in a general sense, what are the factors that go into satisfaction, so that then we can say, okay, we need to lean into compensation. I'm thinking we kind of do. We need to lean into compensation, but we also need to lean into planning time or this or that or the other, these range. So I appreciate that, and I also appreciate the attention to the differentiation of these campuses with these profiles. The retention is lower than campuses with these profiles, and these job circumstances are a little bit different. And I guess what I would always be supportive of is a responsive approach. That is to say that once you tease this out and you see the nuance, you will be supported, at least from this trustee, but I think the trustees generally, in coming up with a nuanced approach, so that if compensation looks a little more complicated in some ways, but that it also values the tapestry of the work here or there, I would be supportive of that. And I would be supportive of not having a year of 7% increases followed by a year of 0% increases, which equals 3.5, which is kind of a bait and switch, so that even as we work our deficit, we figure out how to continue to be leaders and continue to be aggressive in supporting the full range of compensation of our teachers, which especially includes wages.
Absolutely, sir. We know that we have to continue to make big strides, and again, you hit the nail on the head. You follow up something like that with a 0, you've done really minimal. You have not made up the ground that you intended to, so we have to continue to make those strides, absolutely.
Thank you. So I wanted to really just recognize the fact that we have made big increases on these. I know it's in the present in the fancy video, but I just want the public to be sure they understand that last year, when we talked about this, our actual retention rate for teachers in Title I schools was 63%. That has grown by about 12 percentage points to 75.3%, which is great. It's still not at the pre-pandemic levels, but we're getting there. We did miss our target, but I see really non-incremental growth. It's like big growth, which is what we want to see. And same thing with the retention rate for staff that are not teachers. That jumped from 67.5% to 84.3%. So my hope, when we hired our interim superintendent, one of our biggest goals was retention and morale and compensation for our staff. And now we're seeing the fruits of that, and I really hope people do continue to stay. My question is, have you seen like the outliers? Like, what are some of the campuses that, like, say, campuses that are, predominantly economically disadvantaged students that actually had an amazing retention rate compared to those that didn't? What was the rationale, like, that you can?
Yes,
what's
ma'am.
the explanation?
Thank you, Trustee Singh, for the question. And I do want to double down on the fact that our interim superintendent has certainly set the tone for us to be able to do this work, and the latitude for us to put humans at the center of this work. And without the adults in this district, our students will not be successful, and that is absolutely the lever to high student outcomes. So I also want to mention that just because I think it's such a nuanced data piece with what true retention really means and how it's calculated. So before I answer your question, for clarification, retention of a teacher means that you're in a Title I teacher role and you remain in a Title I teacher role. And that is the retention piece. If you go into an instructional coach, if you go into an assistant principalship, if you go into anything other than a teacher role, you actually do not count in the retention piece. And so as we went boldly into hiring instructional coaches and really cohorting them and doing a strong push there, that's 90. And I would say out of the 90, 65 were our own teachers, 70 even. And so those actually count against us in the numbers. And if we add our folks back in that are actually still with us but in a different capacity, we would actually hit the scorecard goal. It's just not calculated that way, but I do want to make that clear. As far as we do have some campuses that are just exceptional at caring for and retaining their staff members, and truly the biggest lever to that piece is a strong principal and a strong administration. And those principals who keep the humanity at the forefront of the job are the ones that have absolutely the highest retention rates. And that's not that everybody's not attempting to do that. It's just really making that the focus. And I spoke with my team today about that when you care personally and your staff knows that, it will pay you back in leaps and bounds. There is no amount of money that will make you stay if you do not have someone that is leading you that you feel like cares about you. And there's no amount of money that will do that for you. So it is this incredible balance of, I would take less money to work somewhere where I feel loved, valued, cared for, and that I know that my work is important. And so I would say by and large that a strong leadership team are the ones that do that. We are very fortunate to have an incredible group of principals on our campuses, and so I'm thankful to them. The numbers that you see tonight, that reflection, although our superintendent certainly sets that tone, and my team, we get to go be the joy spreaders in so many ways. The reason that we have strong retention this year and our building is because of our to principals, period.
Thank you, principals. Yes, all right. Secretary Boswell.
Yeah, thank you. I want to really amplify President Singh's celebration of this data. We have a lot to be really excited about and what you've brought us tonight. So thank you for that. I know every strong educator we keep, our staff and our teachers, makes a difference for our kids. So thank you so much for that. Really excited to have something so positive to share with the community and to report on, and to really have a deep understanding of all the different ways it's being tackled. So thank you for the video, and thank you to everyone who's chosen to stay in our district, and thank you for everyone who's given people a really good reason to stay. I have a question about that. Looking at all the different things you're doing, the events, the pay, obviously, as you said, Chief Hosek, how people are treated. Obviously, we're never going to be able to pay educators as much as we want to, but we can treat people well always. I know you really leaned into data from the Butt Foundation survey, from your own internal sources, looking at satisfaction, looking at how people are feeling. And I'm really interested in what role that plays going forward. We know we've seen people leaving because the economy was strong. There were great reasons to stay because of a pandemic, because of expensive, housing in Austin, because of working conditions. So is that ongoing to adapt to whatever's next that gives people a reason to leave or to stay?
Absolutely. It's very strange because Trustee Boswell is on the screen behind me, so it's strange to talk to you with my back to you. I really think that, our own internal data is driving our work. I think that it's hard to say that we didn't choose the right things to focus on when you see increases such as these. I think that we are still in a place that there's a lot of trepidation about, okay, I feel good for right now. Is this really who we are? Is this really how we behave? Or it's almost like waiting for the other shoe to drop. We're still in that mode, I think, of a little bit of hesitancy in that way. It is 100% my team's focus to make sure that our employees know that we are being just as genuine and authentic as we possibly can be about true care for our employees. I do think that our own internal data has let us know again where we need to focus. We still need to focus on how we reduce the load on especially our teachers' plates. How do we streamline some processes? How do we make it less bureaucratic at the central office level? I think that that's a huge focus for us. I think that obviously we have an incredible amount of work to do on making sure that campuses' safety and security protocols are in place. You want to feel safe and you want to feel, in a conducive work environment to that safety. You want to feel that where you are. And so in addition to compensation, which we've already talked about, those are really our focal points moving forward. And truly for us at the chief officer level, we focus quite a bit on how we streamline the work that we're doing and make it more palatable for our campuses and for our teachers. If we can reduce the continuous ad that teachers feel, we will come out of this. We will stop, I think, trying to pull out of a well that is dry if we can stop piling on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Zapata.
I think what y'all doing is excellent, and the compensation, of course, is key to keeping our teachers. However, I think I'm just curious. When you talked about the survey, how often are you taking the pulse of teachers so that we know that they're still good or there's something that may come up, so that we don't wait till the end of the year and find out, oh, this teacher's not coming back? Is there something you're doing in the middle to just keep the pulse of the activity and interest of teachers to stay?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Zapata. Yes, ma'am. We actually, the survey and the data that you saw, that's actually a survey that is given twice a year. We do take we take the pulse of those Title I teachers. It is a Title I teacher-focused survey. We take it in the fall and we take it again in the spring, so that we can continue to make sure that we keep a pulse on that. We also this year have through collaboration with our Office of Innovation, we were awarded grant money so that our principals at Title I campuses are receiving executive coaching And so they are able to go through the data with those principals and really say, well, where are you really like knocking it out of the park, and where are some places that we can work on, so that we can see some of that movement between the fall and spring administration. And so we're very excited to be able to bring you that data back at the end of the year. But yes, ma'am, we are checking in regularly. And our employee experience team is also checking in with teachers and making sure that we keep those connections with campuses. To that end, we are actually, we have social connections planned with some of our, we call them our anchor teachers, the ones that truly hold the campus together and are the kind of the glue. And they will absolutely tell you the truth about what's going on campuses and keep you informed. And so we are looking forward to having those connections with them in the coming days, actually. So yes, ma'am.
That's great. And I think one other question is around the relationships with students, because I keep hearing that there's students that don't trust the teacher. Is there activities or trainings that y'all are providing to build that relational culture with the students on their campuses?
I'm incredibly happy that you asked that. And without getting on a soapbox, this is something that Dr. Holly and I discuss regularly. We have cohorts of teachers that have been in the business for quite some time, that learned how to be a successful teacher and build those relationships in the moment. Like, you were put in that situation and you learned that really truly the relationships that was the saving grace to being a fantastic teacher and being able to motivate students. That is not something that is really truly well thought out and planned for and trained for prior to your teaching experience. This is something that we need to do a much better job in with onboarding and with that foundational piece of training, that when you come to be a teacher in Austin ISD, you will be trained, and you will be trained in accordance with the values of our district. So, for example, every single person that comes to work for us needs to go through equity training, culturally, proficient practices, and making sure that we lay that foundation rather than it being an opt-in, it being a requirement. And so that truly matches with our values. And so, to your point, we have to take that to scale. And so when we onboard 800 teachers a year, that is an incredible endeavor, but it is absolutely worth our time. And so that is something that my office is working on right now in collaboration with the Office of Organizational Transformation, Dr. Holly's office. And so we are looking forward to being able to put those pieces in play. It is, again, not going to be something that we can just throw together, and we don't want to do that. We want to do it in a very clean and authentic way that is fruitful and that makes that is absolutely preparing our teachers to go in and build those relationships with students. So stay tuned for that. We are working on that as we speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary, why am I messing up?
It's the order.
Everyone's, I know, the whole order thing, yes, but trustee, anything? No, okay. Anyone else? No. We good? Okay. We went over a little bit, but we still did a good job.
It was my fault.
No, it wasn't at all. That was a really, really helpful presentation, and actually a really fun one, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justice.
Great job.
All right, so this actually ends the section on the information reports from the administration. So at this time, we will now move into the preview of the upcoming regular board agendas. Oh wait, did I miss something?
7-2.
Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Thank y'all. So, Mr. Segura, your turn.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Patty Rodriguez, our Deputy Superintendent, and Dr. Robinette, Assistant Superintendent of Special Education Programs, to come up and share a presentation and answer any questions that you may have. This is in regards to scorecard items 9 and 10, special education evaluation status. And as a reminder, this was a scorecard item that was added several months ago, I think before the summer break. And so this is our first report out on that. And this should count, time-wise?
This counts.
Yes.
This counts.
And Dr. Rocha-Gill is also with us. Thank you, Dr. Rocha-Gill.
Good
Go ahead.
evening, President Singh, Interim Superintendent Segura, Board of Trustees, Drew Robinette, Assistant Superintendent for Special Education. Here to report for the first time on scorecard goals 9 and 10 on special education evaluations update. As Interim Superintendent Segura mentioned, this was added to your scorecard in May of 2023, so a recent addition to your scorecard, and appreciate that additional communication with not only you, but with the public overall. We'll be in front of you for 4 times this school year. The summary that we will complete today is really summarizing the work for 2022, 2023, going all the way through the summer. We'll be coming back to you again in January, showing all of our fall progress. We'll be coming again in March for a midpoint for where we are with spring, and then again and checking along with June to see how we do for the rest of the school year. So that's what we're here to discuss this evening. I am joined by also Dr. Teresa Rocha-Gill, who is our Executive Director over Compliance and Evaluations. In the back, in solidarity and support with our team, we have Amanda Molina Garza, who is our Director of Evaluations. You know, that was a position we were very pleased to fill, and not only have a school psychologist in that position, but someone who is very well respected and is a bilingual school psychologist and builds capacity in our team overall. So I appreciate anything that I shared this evening. I don't know how to evaluate students in this manner. I've learned quite a bit in this role, but there are tremendous experts in our field who are building that capacity overall with our students. Next slide, please. So the scorecard metrics I'll be reporting on this evening are really giving a summary of where we are for 22-23, sort of looking at that scorecard metric, and then telling you a bit about some of the progress that is underway to date with our team. So there are 2 elements to the metrics that you have. The first one is around the number of initial evaluations or reevaluations, sort of that progress of what we'll be conducting and what we'll meet in terms of set goals. There was a period of time that you all proposed in Appendix A to the state of Texas around some particular goals that were set in mind for us to be able to make some additional progress around evaluations. Knowing that we were doing that in the past with a small, mighty team of 22 evaluators and a substantial investment in addition to that, and to contract evaluators who are part of our team in feathering that work. And we're excited that we have that additional capacity in our team this year moving forward, and wish to sustain that. So that first metric is a number where we want to see that number increasing over time, right? We want to see that one growing. And so you can see by taking a look here that our overall total, looking at where we were when we were looking at our students for 22-23, 4,767 initial and reevaluations conducted, meeting those set goals at the time we had set that particular metric for fall and spring. And then we're looking to see that continue to grow. Already exceeded what was the goal of 4,174, and then we'll continue to see that sustaining momentum. Why? Because we've infused additional individuals who are going to be in the capacity of our team to grow that overall. What we want to see as a system is sort of a balancing out. Obviously, the requests that we receive for evaluations, that we're able to meet that. So the number may fluctuate, but where the number should be, it should be consistent that our output is sort of addressing and being able to reconcile with our input for student-requested evaluations. The second portion of that is around the number of pending evaluations that will be less than the set goals for summer, fall, or spring, and that we will be at 0 evaluations by 2025 that are out of any timeline. I think we came to you in August and showed you the trends moving in those directions of being more in timeline with our evaluations, which has been some substantial effort. So overall, we're underway with our 23-24 school year. As you know, our goal for summer evaluations was 2,000 evaluations. We had over 2,700 testing sessions and completed over over 2,220 evaluations for students. As of August 25th, when we came to you most recently, really in terms of preparation for the meeting on September 7th, we shared with you where we were with that status when you were deliberating the order from the Texas Education Agency, and we were at 1,758 pending evaluations. Importantly, because I know this was important to the public at that time, and this is substantial progress for what it's worth, 72% of those evaluations then were within timeline. Obviously, the goal long-term is to get into, again, that matching where we're 0% of any of our evaluations out of timeline for students, okay? So moving forward from summer and planning ahead, so the summer productivity is now moving into the 23-24 school year. So this is a bit of a look ahead of building from the very last day of school, the day after the last day of school. That's when we start our next school year. Most school districts don't do substantial testing in the summertime. Ideally, we'd be able to address that as a system overall during the school year. However, we have had to be creative related to that to make sure that we are maintaining progress for our students. And especially districts of this size, it's becoming more and more common with the inflow of evaluations. So with that in mind, for us, the 23-24 school year commences literally the day after school of the 22-23 school year. And we've had substantial evaluation clinics, Dr. Rocha Gill and the team, and a number of both permanent employees and contract evaluators ran those evaluation clinics 7 days a week and accessing for students. I want to say something related to what Chief Hosick said about maintaining and building capacity within our staff. We'll be sharing about the real progress of our school psychologists, our diagnosticians, our related service providers, speech and language pathologists, and others who are feathering out the evaluation of students. But we really have to acknowledge as well our special education teachers, our general education teachers who are really trying to compile valuable data so that if we were completing assessments either during the summer or during the referral process during the school year, we had quality classroom observations, student data components, all of those components with parent and teacher input that are built into learning for our students and in evaluating them more completely. Okay, so this is just to take a look at where we are. So our goals in terms of we had that summer actual that I mentioned and that 1758 that I mentioned, and those are trending accordingly. And then where we're projecting, at least at the time, what we wrote the scorecard goal for fall and spring, you can see those three items, summer actual, fall 23, and spring 24, will combine together and work in tandem to see how we're progressing for the overall scorecard measure for this upcoming year, or this current school year. Next slide, please. You've already seen this at the September 7th meeting and showing again that progress from January through August, and that top line showing those averages per month of the evaluation progress relative to the prior year. Next slide. And this is just to show you for sorry, I'm saying next slide to probably myself there. Just to show you, likewise, we had to show you that we are still progressing accordingly with that, that blue line showing 2023 evaluations from January through September. And in September, you'll see that evaluation progress for that month, 747, whereas last year, in the fall of 23 in September, there were 291 completed evaluations. That's a very positive signal because it trends not only with an aggressive summer evaluation program, but with the infusion of our excellent school psychologists and diags getting to that 74 out of 75 momentum we're trying to build together, that they are likewise progressing not only in their productivity, but their more comprehensive approach to analyzing our student needs overall. Okay? So likewise, the pending evaluations trend line, this likewise is something that you saw at the September 7th meeting and just showed that at that time, there were 1,758 pending evaluations. There were questions about what was in and out of timeline. You can see those data there. The end timeline is the red line that's there, and the past due or out of timeline is there with the dark black line. That estimates to about 72% of our evaluations evaluations were in timeline. It's critically important that we think about this in sort of a context of perspective. It's very important to us that we want to get that black line down to show that we have 0 of our students who are past due. But likewise, we encourage, when you consider a substantial backlog over years, to really see the trend line and likewise see the progress that had to happen with total pending overall and cutting that in half, in addition to making momentum with incoming evaluation requests that were pretty prevalent throughout the school year. This likewise shows that same trend continuing on through September. We're not to November yet. I guess that's when different meetings will change, and maybe we'll have a video put together for you. Who knows? But nevertheless, you can see there that there were total pending 1498. We're trending in the right direction, that those pending numbers are decreasing. We do anticipate there'll be some increase because we have seen sustained momentum. In the summer, we don't get a substantial number of evaluation requests that are coming in. So we have to moderate what's the inflow of requests as well as the additional outputs as we're progressing over time. And then you can see that, again, fortunately, that track line is showing that we're making that progress. We always want to continue with a trend of that in timeline exceeding that out of timeline or that past due timeline. And that's likewise about 71, 72%. So it's pretty comparable to where we were in August. This relates to the inflow and the dynamic system that I was sharing with you. And so students can have evaluations requested, obviously, as initial evaluations where there are no services provided to date, and we provide a comprehensive, full individual initial evaluation, or we refer to it as an FIIE. And then likewise, we have, at a minimum, there's a consideration every 3 years for a reevaluation for students. That can be done through a review of existing evaluation data or a full comprehensive set of evaluations in a variety of areas. And so this shows you the inflow in terms of it being a dynamic system. So I have to acknowledge that where we see those reductions in those numbers of pending, that also means that we were chewing at the backlog, for lack of a better description, or addressing the backlog, all the while trying to address the inflow coming into the system. It's not perfect yet. It's certainly something that we have tremendous opportunities to continue to grow, but we have some very committed people associated with that. And so when you look at the final August 2023, those 358 dynamic, or rather inflow requests, maybe they were all dynamic, but about 66% of them are initial evaluation requests. And you'll likewise notice we're starting to see some trends of school-age students in particular. There were changes in the Texas legislature around dyslexia evaluations, and although we had gotten ahead of that in terms of offering more comprehensive evaluations to parents, there still was an ability of parents to seek to do that in a more abbreviated fashion through Section 504 laws. That has changed in the state of Texas, so any and all of those students will filter, for lack of a better description, into our system for inflow. And so you can see that there's a substantial increase in August of 2023 coming into our system than what we had for August of 2022. We're moderating that and keeping an eye on that and seeing where we have the appropriate staff members to meet the needs of that, and likewise where we may have to provide any additional support or support or an infusion of resources through contracted team members should we need to. The overall piece for us is to not only meet the timelines, but to meet the needs of students and families. That is our priority. And so we know that it's the bedrock of idea that we have good evaluation data on students and that we build thoughtful individual education programs or IEPs around what those data provide. Okay. There have been several improvements in the system in support of student outcomes. And there are things that are, again, speaking to what Chief Hosick said, is that it's important for us, and we're very proud of the individuals who've come into our team, but we want to retain those individuals. We want folks to come, grow, and stay with us, which is really a part of Austin ISD's philosophy. So those compensation and incentive things that you all infused in the budget, which was quite a challenge to be able to put into place. We know that our evaluation salaries increased by 20%. We know that there was consideration not only of the stipends of special education teachers, bilingual education teachers, all of which speak to our students, and likewise for any of our special education related services and those support staff and our evaluators. All of those pieces came into play, and we've continued to sustain, for those who can make that additional progress, an incentive plan that is around additional productivity for folks, both productivity and quality as two pillars in terms of the completion of evaluations in a timely manner for students. The recruitment and support has led to those 74 evaluators that I've mentioned, and of those, 14 are bilingual. We have 32 school psychologists and 42 diagnosticians. We are building Grow Your Own diagnosticians programs as well in partnership with our regional centers and trying to build additional capacity because we know that it's important for us to have not only a bench, but that we're retaining quality people within our system. And that's something that people are considering as well as a career in a way that they can contribute to our system. So that's been exceptionally exciting as well. The extensive summer testing, which I've already mentioned there, those evaluation clinics, there have been a number of things that have likewise been around. Our efforts around technical support, data tracking, and resources. And so to the extent that it is possible, we've had data tracking systems where not only our evaluators, but our evaluation supervisors were tracking on spreadsheets and sorting things and spending their time and their expertise on filtering things in ways that were taking an inordinate amount of time. So shoring up a solid system for tracking and watching that through process has been not only critically important, it's been liberating for them to focus on the right things and focus on how we can be more strategic about where we see gaps or adjustments that need to be made. The other thing is we've put into place things in terms of click reporting. We started to standardize ways for evaluators to enter data into reporting so that they didn't have to create their own tables and other pieces. It was displaying in a way that really had the expertise in the recommendations they were making, the components in terms of what they completed with the evaluation process. Likewise, we have multidisciplinary teams who have been working together on the implementation of something in our system called the FIE writer, or the full individual evaluation writers. That's been a bit of a transition, admittedly, to move from our former submission system to integrate it all into our system for student data tracking and management in our Easy IEP system. But what it does is it helps us to be more careful and notice our tie-in lines for compliance, as well as seeing more collaboration and integration with multidisciplinary reports for students. So rather than pieces, parts being put together in a system separate, really building that into a robust way to collect those data for a student in a full individual evaluation within our Easy IEP system. These teams are creative. We've purchased iPads and other things for them to be able to, likewise, especially through observational components, track things for students and make sure that we're gathering that, as well as really overseeing programming and accountability systems for the entire team. I'd like to take the moment to really build on capacity building for the team and team development, and we'll really blow that up a bit more on the next couple of slides. So I mentioned the data visualization tools that have not only made it helpful for our evaluators, our school psychologists, and our diagnosticians, but likewise for our campuses to be able to see how we're tracking along with that progress. We provide a lot of feedback around productivity, and we have productivity dashboards for our team members, which then helps with coaching and support. We want to know where people are finding wrinkles or hiccups that we as a system need to address rather than them feeling isolated, alone, or that they can't tackle the problem. So it allows us to swoop in as more of a multidisciplinary team. It allows likewise our evaluation supervisors to pitch in and to bring to our attention, Dr. Rocha Gill's attention, Ms. Molina Garza's attention, and my attention, things that we need to look at more systemically. So when you see those trends and you're kind of watching it, it helps us to have a better sense of how we have a sort of system health, not only individual health of the evaluators. The productivity and feedback has been important for us, and it likewise helps us to build capacity of leaning in, mentoring, and supporting folks who are moving along in our process. We're likewise checking into our qualifying rates, consistently monitoring the number of evaluations that we have, as well as our eligibility. How is that tracking? Where's a robust MTSS system for us? Where we make some adjustments to that, and how are we progressing along? As I mentioned, the inclusion of dyslexia for our students is going to be something that will be impacting our percentage overall as a district in terms of identified students. We're very aware of that, and we're likewise seeing that trend across the state. But this is important for us. The majority of our students who are identified, for those of you who aren't familiar, there are multiple disability categories, at least 13 eligibility categories, and those can fall into a number of areas. And a student may have multiple areas of eligibility. And so we always look at whether it's a primary or the first area of eligibility, a secondary, tertiary, we have quaternary. You can do the math on those. But it's important that we think overall about 40%, just about 45% of our students, the primary disability is a specific learning disability, and that could be in written expression, it could be in mathematics calculation, and dyslexia is now considered part of that as a specific learning disability under the new changes with the law. I mentioned we would kind of blow up that capacity building a bit more, and so I'm really excited that it's not lost on us, and this is a new practice here in Austin ISD with the leadership that this team has in place to really address the needs of our novice evaluators, those who are beginning in first or second year of experience. And so they have a new cohort they call the TED cohort, Training Exceptional Diagnosticians, and so they're branded. They don't have T-shirts yet, but I'm pretty sure that I'll work with Office of Innovation and Development and we'll get those or something like that. But their goal is not only to bring in excellent people, but to retain them, right? We know that that would be a huge loss to us. It's not uncommon for people beginning in their career or in a new role that you start to hit those bumps or those hiccups. We see it particularly in October and November for novice teachers, and that is not uncommon to a trend for diagnosticians and school psychologists as well. So that's not lost on us. They've been including a number of trainings as well as just camaraderie and partnership together with one another around our Easy IEP system, FIE writer, report writing, how do you even write that? A number of programs do a variety of report writing, some less than others, and so we want to build and fortify that capacity so that people become more and more confident and they use their expertise in making the right recommendations for students. The cohort groups I mentioned, in addition to having those 14 bilingual team members, that's not including our evaluation supervisors who are bilingual and our director of evaluations. We have 14 evaluators who are certified, and they are part of a bilingual cohort because that is also a unique group of folks and really addressing the language needs and the cultural needs of our students who speak Spanish as a primary language for them, or that's the language that we're assessing in. So they're conducting research together, they're collaborating and having brainstorming sessions. That really likewise builds mutual capacity. We're always better together. The skill building has built into check-ins and touch points. I've been very proud of this team for being much more routine and not having folks work as an island. It's a big difference to go from 22 to 74, and so you've got to build that capacity in individuals and have them feel a part of a team and continue to coach them along in that process. So that skill building has been also been with the bringing in of additional experts in the field. The team had some CSEP training with Dr. Schultz, which is teaching them not only a more efficient but a comprehensive way to address specific learning disabilities in the evaluation process. It likewise builds and fortifies their ability to have professional development units, things to maintain both their licensure, their credentialing, or their certification. The evaluator cohort groups and the coaching and supervision and support, we're not only almost fully staffed, one remaining, with all of our school psychologists and our diagnosticians. We're fully staffed with our evaluation supervisors. This is the first year. I was only here a year prior, but it's the first time I can say that. So all 4 of those positions are there. What that allows us to do is to start to nest communities and have points of contacts, coaches, people that you can go to. Not that dissimilar from the executive director model we have in our schools, right, where our executive directors support our principals. We've built that with the evaluation supervisors and their team members. They're similarly situated in their expertise, but then they likewise can be solid coaches and build those skill building pieces that I talked about. They're likewise building upon peer review processes. The stronger that our team gets, they're continuing to lean into one another. So those are the pieces that are building that skill building as well. So that's really it for our report this evening, and making that progress. I look forward to seeing you at other points in the future. But there's truly a comprehensive approach that isn't just about looking at metrics and numbers for students. For us, it's more of a comprehensive process to meet the needs not only of our students and families, but to retain quality people who can help us provide more and more robust evaluation for students, and then services and programming and the recommendations henceforth. Thank you for your time.
Wow. Y'all have been just a little bit busy. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
ma'am.
This is incredible. The fact that you all have, we had somewhat ambitious goals, I would say, when y'all set them back in January, and you have sort of blown past them. Good work.
They were terrifying for us.
Yeah, okay.
No, admittedly.
I figured.
They were terrifying. I probably shouldn't say that, but sitting in a room and wondering how that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I have to commend that it becomes the whole system had to also lift for us to get to those goals.
That's right.
Every time we infuse both resources and then build people, that helps, right? It's the system owning that opportunity. So thank you for validating that. And a huge thank you to our schools, because every time we have an initial evaluation completed, it's the whole system. Those special education teachers, those general education teachers and inclusive practice are then working together to build a quality IEP for the student. And so that's not lost on us either. This system is moving, and we want to be able to stabilize, so it's everyone working together.
Thank you. So trustees, now is the time for us to ask questions on the current vision around the SPED evaluation status. By the way, there's no time limit on this. But just so you know, but this is, one of the things that we do want to monitor closely. Don't suddenly start talking very slowly. I know you won't. But our goal tonight is really the monitoring and ensuring our reality meets the vision presented. So who wants to start us off? I know, but we can have someone starting us off that's different. Okay. Okay, Trustee Hunter, I'll start with you.
Excellent. Thank you all for the report and all of the work that's been done. Thank you to everyone who's been working. And y'all know me, I'm gonna speak plainly. Evaluations are important to the families that are trying to determine whether or not their child is going to receive or qualify for SPED services. That is step 1 of 100. For those who are already, for lack of a better phrase, in the system, what is on their minds are timely, appropriate ARDs with properly written goals and IEPs that are executed with fidelity every single day. And what I'm hearing from the community is, that's great. You're getting caught up on something you should have been already caught up on. What they are still wanting us to acknowledge is, if you're already going through the process, is bumps on that road too. And so what I really am requesting from the superintendent is, and I know that you've already got some things in the work, and in your time, I'm gonna let you talk to people about that, but that we share where we are on that end of the spectrum, that we do have ARDs or where we are out of compliance and how we're going to pull that back in, because whether or not we acknowledge it here is being documented. It will be public record. So I think for our families to continue to trust us is for us to do what we do best or what we are trying to do best, and that's be transparent and acknowledge that. And so, again, everyone is working hard. Right? I feel like that too. Like, it's like I paid the light bill, now they want the gas bill too. So I feel that, and I know that y'all are betwixt a rock and a hard place when it comes to that. And so you're like spinning this, like I'm spinning as fast as I can, but we still have this huge organization where things shift and things move, and everybody is not moving through our system the way that other people are moving. So again, as we continue to say, yes, we're caught up on evaluations, I really want us at some point to come in here and say, and here's where we are for those of you who are already gotten your evaluations, your child has qualified for special education services. We had somebody call in tonight and say, help us. So that's something that I just really want us to take some time. And like I said, I know you got some stuff in the work. I'm not going to blow it up here. But I really think that would help a lot of our families continue to support us and help us help them.
Thank you. We're going to go the opposite way now. So, Trustee Gonzalez.
Okay.
Surprise.
I appreciate the words that Trustee Hunter said, some of them taken directly out of my mouth. Yeah, and my heart, I guess. I appreciate the root cause analysis and addressing those root causes, and it's very evident in the data that's presented by the administration that strategy was successful. And so my question is, clearly we've been able to improve student outcomes by completing evaluations on time and getting them in compliance with timeline. So how do we replicate that success at the next step of the process? Are the ARDs able to happen within 30 days? You know, I think about, as a teacher, my ability to implement the IEP when there's so many schedule changes at the secondary level, particularly at the beginning of the year. My access to the accommodations that I need to then implement into my instruction. So how well positioned are we to continue that compliance past this initial stage? And then what are the adjustments that would be needed if there are some, especially as it applies to the budget? I mean, I know something that came out last year that we ultimately decided not to invest in was the position of like an ARD facilitator. And so if I'm thinking about the next step of compliance in this timeline, how can we replicate what clearly you've demonstrated with evaluations?
So I'll start on that one. So when we first started this, when we took this on as priority 1A, we were building an initiative off the Stetson report, right? And if we go back to the Stetson report, many of the recommendations in there were not necessarily tied to just evaluations, right? It was really hardly at all. Yeah, it was all about the inclusive model. It was about, getting to a place where our organization was supporting our students and that our educators had the professional development required to support them. And so all of those initiatives were what was ultimately the foundation for like our work product that started all of this back in January and February. And since then, as we've worked with TEA, elements of that have been incorporated into the order, but all the other work is still continuing. And so I think because of the structure of this scorecard, the information presented is, evaluation specific, but you're right. And as, Trustee Hunter said, there are many other things that are ongoing. So, getting to have the opportunity to share with the trustees where we are across all those priorities, as Dr. Robinette has developed them internally within the system and as understood by the entire leadership team, what are going to be the asks as we move forward. You're right, ARD facilitators are one of those things that didn't make it across the budget finish line last year. Is it something that we are going to prioritize? When are we going to become aware of it? When are we going to communicate with the trustees so that there's an understanding of it and a commitment to do so? But all of that we're eager to share with you all and present. But I want the community to know, our staff to know, trustees to know that all of that work never stopped. It is continued on. This is just kind of the work that we are tasked with reporting on at this moment and to ensure compliance with TA in order. But yeah, no, I very much appreciate that, and that's where we want to go, the inclusive model. So.
So we'll move to Trustee Whitley-Chu.
So looking at this, still, decreasing but large number of pending evaluations, what systems do we have in place and that we are implementing to support those students so they can keep learning in the environment that they're in with their specific needs and differentiating for them, or even the students who might not qualify for special education services, but their teachers and their parents are still seeing a little bit of extra need?
You want to say that? Here you go. So you're absolutely right. One of the things we're looking at is, while anyone is awaiting, what are the tiered interventions and supports that we can put in place solidly in a classroom? We're likewise we'll be talking about this briefly, is it next week, with the scorecard goal that we'll be presenting on related to achievement for reading and math for special education. You'll get it much more robustly around the academic program overall. But building in the appropriate capacities of our teachers and strong systematic approaches to meeting student needs. We are leveraging any and all opportunities to have access and building capacity in our system overall. And so just on October 9th, I think our numbers are about 86% or about 4,700 of our teachers, our instructional staff members are going through training and development around accommodations and modifications. And yes, those are baseline things that we should have in place for folks, but really demystifying and building on those expectations that those aren't just happening, but that we're building upon that capacity throughout. We had the good fortune of all of our leadership having universal design for learning components brought into place. Leon Young came to speak with them at the Leadership Institute, and then they had tools that they could bring and build capacity in with their teams. That's also been built into the curricular materials. When Dr. Stetson came, separate and apart from identification, Trustee Whitley-Chu, it's an entire system. You'll recall from her report that she acknowledged that there were only about a quarter of classrooms during the time that they did their observations where they were seeing solid scaffolds in place for students. So a student doesn't have to go down the hallway to use a particular tool, right, to have an outline or something to help them. So we're trying to not only have appropriate tiered interventions in our general classrooms, but build the capacity in our team overall so that our students can latch on, connect to those schema in the meantime, and that we're likewise doing small group instruction, doing those appropriate interventions for them as quickly and as expeditiously as we can. We have prioritized those reevaluations where there are some particular, those initial evaluations where there's been no access to service, or there's been a particular critical need as well. It's hard to prioritize anything because really everything's a priority. And we acknowledge that. When it's your child, when you're concerned, it matters. We're likewise, to the extent possible, we're trying to build that into capacity and that shared ownership, which is pivotal to the entire view of the Stetson report around a vision that has shared ownership for students, is something we're trying to build into all the teams. So it takes on a variety of different ways at particular campuses, but fortifying core instruction for students and those tiered interventions within general classrooms is going to be important, and then likewise some of those supplementary materials in place as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't say for students who likewise may need some particular accommodations or otherwise that might be awaiting an evaluation through 504 services, that also avails us an opportunity to provide accommodation structures and supports for them in the interim.
Trustee Zapata.
Thank you, Interim Superintendent Matias, for your explanation of the whole process. And I think y'all are doing amazing work. You have really done some very deep, hard work, and we appreciate it. I too was concerned with the caller that called in, because I'm glad that they are using this platform to bring to our attention things, because that's the only way we're going to work together to figure things out, right? And so how, you mentioned a lot of the support, and so do our school campuses know of a process to get to you guys for that help? Because they came and told us, so so I'm just curious if there is that process so that they feel that comfortable enough to say, you know what, this is what's happening, like a little hotline or something that says, hey, we bring to your attention, so we don't start slipping behind, and then the gap starts getting big again.
Thank you for that question, Trustee Zapata. In good faith, we do have structure set up. Obviously, the first line of defense is in partnership with your campus leadership, and we've been in close partnership. Ms. Rodriguez is here with teaching, learning, and leading overall. Dr. Angel Wilson, Ms. Lakeisha Drinks and their teams, their executive directors in supporting our principals, and we're often huddling together around how we can provide the right response if there's a challenge or something that's been brought to our attention. Structurally within our department, we likewise have coordinators and folks who are providing touch points at all of our campuses, and we have supervisors for campus supports as well. We have 414 SPED, or that's our phone number, where people will route folks if they need help for us. We have access points on our website as well. We know that not everyone uses those points of technology. And then we likewise have been building on our Parent Empower Hours and Capacity Building series for any of our folks that are new to special education or who are trying to grow their skills and expertise, and likewise just have questions. We want to build that rapport and those connections with them. So by all means, we want them to work as closely as possible with their campuses, but if they need additional support, that's what we're here for. And we will go out and support, and we will likewise connect with them. Either the parents themselves or in working with looking at the structures and supports and the design and the model for students, and sort of building that out. So that's one of the things that I'm grateful for, that we're a district that's invested in both a specialist group and coordinator group, and they're into different learning communities. There was one coordinator for each of the executive director of schools. There's not for them, they're from special education, but it's parallel of schools. And then likewise, we have specialists who are building capacity, not only support for parents and families, but building capacity in our teachers at different points on the continuum, whether they're providing support and applied learning skills for students, which may be more functional skills in addition to strong academic goals that are important for students as well. They might be providing support in terms of moderation and different things for our students. So I would say that's the place where folks can go. Our website has all of those contacts as well. And if there's anything that people can do to find us, then please contact 414 SPED or SPED department at austinisd.org, or we will try and put folks in contact. We do know that anything that Superintendent Segura hears or our team hears in teaching, learning, and leading, usually we'll hear from folks, and then we are frequently huddling together to go out and see what we can do if there's a gap in service, a gap in support, there's a gap in structure, or there might be a misunderstanding that we need to kind of resolve and work through. Last but not least, just by law, this isn't what I'm pointing people to at all, but there are things that, and there's dispute resolution processes that are built in, that are part of the bedrock in the framework for IDEA, which is the special education law, right? The Individual with Disabilities Education Act. And so those are obviously availed to parents. Those are part of their rights and community members. But we really want to try and keep as much as possible that we're working together and trying to solve and mutually problem solve those things as well.
Okay. Well, they are asking for help for ARDS and IEP, so Just FYI.
Yeah, we're doing team members who are going out and sitting side by side with folks. We're doing that not only with other teachers, but also with our team members and our specialists. But it sounds like we need to send some additional support that's we're alerted of related to an additional campus. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Sabata. Secretary Boswell.
Yeah, I want to thank all my colleagues for the questions, really about going deeper, that obviously compliance is essential, but we want and owe more, and evaluations are, as Trustee Hunter said, our first step. So I really appreciate the deeper conversation about what we're hearing loud and clear from our community. And you know, we're hearing from people who say we're not there yet. And I'm really encouraged, but I'm starting to hear from families who have had challenges who say, you know, the share is feeling different for me, for my family. And that's really encouraging. And I want to make sure you know what I'm hearing, and that in some cases, I think it's real evidence that we're on the right tracks. So thank you for that. It's encouraging to hear that after a lot of years of not always hearing that. So thank you. We're hearing that in spotty ways. Really appreciate the conversation about how we're ensuring that what we envision on paper is really translating on our campuses. And I have a second question related to that, about how we are ensuring safety for staff who are flagging it, and how we can be really sure that we're addressing that. And really would love a question about whether that's an appropriate part of our monitoring as well. I think a lot of us remember when staff were really flagging very publicly, 5 or so years ago, a lot of the issues with special education, and didn't always find a district that was willing to hear and willing to take that seriously. And I think our families have often found themselves in the same place. So what are we doing to really assure safety for people who are coming forward to tell us what we need to hear when things aren't working as we envision? It's a big, complicated system. So every good practice, good system, good training, good expectation requires a lot of work to keep it going. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Thank you for that question. And so obviously on paper, there's several things that we are in real life. We're not just playing that on TV. In real life, we're really addressing 3 key areas as part of our recovery plan and our initiative. And one of those is around inclusive practices and a vision of inclusion for students. The second is around high-quality instruction, and the third around compliance and evaluation. So I want to unpack that a bit, because there are key things that are important for the inclusion of students in part of FAPE, and really looking at the least restrictive environment for students that require us to continue to build capacity in our staff members and continue to build capacity and understanding in our community about shared ownership and shared partnership of a vision that really shows the needs of our students being met by a system that serves it well. We are looking very carefully at not only we've moved from just a ratio base for staffing that is used in the projection process, right, in terms of budgeting, but really looking at making decisions that are with the student at the center and the services built in and around that for the student. Now, I know that isn't precisely answering your question, but it is part of the backdrop for the context of what we're doing, and our staff have embraced that very, very beautifully, and it has been a huge challenge in some cases, both with mindsets, with efforts, with not seeking not only an inclusion heart and mindset, but asking for additional capacity building as well. We likewise are looking at where we need to fortify supports for a student. Every individual plan is individualized, and so that we may need to have additional supports at points in the day overall for students to help them to be more and more successful. But what we also want to do is, to every extent possible, is re-engage and re-infuse that intent and that mindset of when it is appropriate for a student to re-engage them with their typical peers. That is the closest way for them to be successful. It doesn't mean all the same thing for everyone, but it is a part of the overall fabric of making those strides forward. So we are likewise having not only, we have at least monthly, if not more than that, contact with our department chairs. Our coordinators and our specialists are going out to campuses every 2 weeks, our campus support team, if not more than that. And then our specialists are going in sort of where we have some wrinkles or some pinch points where we need to problem solve a bit more. Exactly what you're saying, like those goals are in mind, and boy, that's not working. We're going to need to really pivot and provide more wraparound for the needs of our students, both in terms of it's a conflictive time. We've seen the additional capacity and help around the social emotional needs of students, the mental health needs of students. That's around general education, special education. We're not immune in one space or the other, and wrapping around those particular supports as well. It is part of our regular monitoring and really those touch points with our principals and with our team members. And so that's something that we are definitely working in and around with each of our campuses, and working to not only problem solve, but working to continually to keep our North Star of providing the right services and supports for students, and to every extent possible, doing that in a way where the community is a strong and inclusive community for them.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, Trustee Boswell, just one thing I'd like to add is, I think from an organizational kind of cultural perspective, we want to ensure that everybody feels supported and we're fostering a culture of trust. For us, we don't necessarily care where information comes from if it helps us do a better job. And so I think having those relationships has allowed us to get information quicker, allows us to respond in a more effective way. And I think also one of the changes that y'all made as part of the last budget cycle was to include the new ombudsperson, which will be coming on board here very shortly. And that'll be another avenue if there's ever an instance where someone would like to share information with us and wants a different avenue to do so. So just wanted to make those 2 points. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. Really appreciate all of that from both of you.
Thank you. I have a follow-up actually for that. So I know currently we have an internal audit system where people can report certain things. Are people using that to report special education issues or potential violations? Is it supposed to be used for stuff like that, or how are we?
So whenever we get something, we report it. There's a log that's generated. I can't speak to the percent of, it doesn't come to mind as a topic that I've seen often. But we do report that, and I think the trustees receive that periodically, and we can provide an update to the board to see the history of it if you'd like to.
I mean, I guess my question is, do we want the community to use that as another tool?
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then where can they find that link? I know it's moved around.
It's on the website. On the exact web page, Brandy, do you remember? Is it just on the main page?
For the audit, the internal audit. Okay.
AISD Anonymous.
Okay, so Google AISD Anonymous. That sounds very creepy, but okay.
Yeah, we can get to it through our webpage, and we'll just confirm that it's prominently viewed.
Okay.
A lot of folks get to it, and we share that information. But yeah, that is another avenue.
Thank you. So I had a couple of questions. Some of the things that you were talking about were, it speaks directly to like larger systemic issues that we're probably going to deal with. So this goes beyond evaluation. But as we try to move towards a more inclusive model, it means we're going to have to restructure some of our campuses, right? I mean, right now we have score centers, we have this, we've got that.
Yeah.
That's like a really
So one
task.
of the things that I've observed in this role and previously in my previous role is that we do have
kind of a legacy hub and spoke model in AISD for certain services for our students. And so to truly embrace an inclusive model, some of those would be kind of moved back to the home campus of the student, right? And so for us as an organization, as we move in that direction, we're going to have to ensure that our principals are embracing that change, that the community understands why we're making that change. Sometimes we've heard from our community that there's already a unit here, and perhaps that's the best location for that student, and understand why the decision was made in the past. But if we truly want an inclusive environment, or at least a restrictive environment, and we don't want students on the bus for an extended period of time, we really need to think about having that back at the home campus. But to do so, there's an investment that's going to be required, both in professional development, but also structurally, and even in some instances, capital improvements. And so all of that is part of this, which is why it is truly, a multi-year initiative. But you're absolutely right, President Singh. That is something that we are taking on and really has to be done with fidelity if it's truly going to be an inclusive culture.
Thank you. And I know that a couple of the contracts that are on our consent agenda are related to supporting that work. Like I know one of the contracts is for universal design, like architecture kind of stuff to help. I'm guessing it's to help make all of our campuses accessible.
So we're not deviating, I don't think.
Oh, yeah.
But universal design is the ability to allow for improvements to not disrupt circulation paths for students. So a student that may be impaired in one way will still travel the same way as any other student. Mm-hmm. And that approach allows for truly an inclusive, facility. Yeah. So as we invest by way of the 2022 bond program, it's important that we have those standards in place so that every new development, every new project, every new investment kind of considers that, right? It's truly a universal design philosophy. And again, you're seeing a lot of school districts that take on this important work commit to it, and we have here in AISD.
Okay, cool, thank you. And I know we have that special education audit contract as well with Stetson. Is that going to consider some of these bigger and stickier issues as well?
So the audit, there's a contract that is part of the work that we're doing with TEA as part of the order, and so that audit will help us identify other areas of improvement, and that'll kind of tie into the overall initiative. So that's kind of what that work includes. And so again, for us as we move forward, the whole idea is gather information, make sure there are no opportunities left on the table, and then as we progress through the work, incorporate. And that audit will provide, I guess, this initial opportunities for improvement in the early spring.
Okay, thank you. And then I had a couple of questions about the evaluations specifically. So when we look at our data monitoring reports, we tend to see a huge discrepancy between our SPED kids who are economically disadvantaged and those who are not. And I'm wondering, with our evaluations, do we have, I know we've made tremendous progress. Is that progress also being seen with our students who are emergent bilingual? Do we have the capacity?
In terms of the completion of those evaluations, that's one of the areas where you're right, that delayed for quite a while for a number of students, and that's why we were very pleased to begin to really grow the bilingual cohort of folks to be able to try and meet that need. We have obviously expectations anyway, but in the agreed order around any that were pending evaluations out of 22, 23, for us to close all of those gaps, if you will, by December 31st. Doesn't matter what the language was for the students. And so not only do we have the capacity that we're working to continue to fortify, we use our own evaluation supervisors. Our supervisor in speech language services is likewise bilingual, has been assisting on related services evaluations. So there are shortages, Trustee Singh, and those individuals are particularly hard to find. So not only fortifying with the incentives and the compensation increases, but then affording both the special education and the bilingual stipend in those cases for people who are doing that work helps us as well. But that's something we're going to have to continue to remain competitive in and around. But we are tracking the progress in and around those as well. It's actually much more challenging depending upon the area of disabilities or eligibilities that you're looking at. Okay. Some evaluations are, not to say that one is more comprehensive than another, just the amount of time and the batteries that need to be completed for certain areas of consideration or suspected disability take quite a bit more time, not only for completion, but sort of the report writing associated with that. And that's where we saw the pinch with particularly our bilingual students that needed to have a full school psychologist completing those pieces that weren't specifically for maybe a learning disability or otherwise, but more social emotional needs that were needed to be examined as well. But the team, and I mean, I think I can speak confidently, and Amanda will tell me if they've been really focused on that.
I appreciate that, and I kind of misspoke. I kind of equated EcoDis with bilingual. It's not the same, but the data we got.
I might have misunderstood.
No, and I just wanted to clarify that they're different populations, but when we do our board monitoring reports, it's only EcoDis. But it made me think about our bilingual students.
And the truth of the matter is, under IDEA and under FAIT, the timelines are the same for any and all children, and so there is an expectation. Federal law is 60 days for completion of evaluation. State of Texas, it's 45 school days, and we need to make sure that we have that and have robust evaluations for any and all of our students, particularly those who've been waiting.
Thank you. And then I did appreciate you made mention of, the importance of having high quality evaluations so that all the services then are properly mapped to the findings. How are you sort of spot checking or ensuring the quality of the evaluations?
I'm going to do my best to answer, and Amanda, if I'm off, Ms. Molina Garza, if you don't mind stepping in, but the team has sort of rubrics that they follow, two separate components. Now, when we're working with contracted evaluation agencies, they likewise have those tools and strategies for review that they're completing. So they look at the elements that should be completed in a report, making sure that those components are there, and then they likewise are doing checks in categories, if you will, like a portion, if you will, as part of auditing of the quality of what's included in the recommendations in those reports, as well as the alignment of that to the particular data that were found. We're continuing to refine those systems to get better and better, but we sort of have a two-pronged approach. Universally, before an evaluation moves to a completed page, it is reviewed to see that it has at least all of the required elements for a complete evaluation. Then a portion of those, we do likewise those additional quality components and checks, and we're looking at where we find trends and patterns, which then leads into the training and development or coaching or otherwise, or revision and review process for our team members.
Okay, and are you finding that most of them are meeting your standards at the first?
We have additional work to do. Very grateful with also with our agencies who are supporting us and having that capacity to review those as well. They're partners in that review process, so there's more and more collaboration with them to sort of make sure we're level setting those expectations.
Thank you.
We're also going to develop a peer review. We are going to pilot it in November and December, and then do like a round robin type of review of our evaluations so that we can collaborate with each other as evaluators.
That's great. Were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say that, each of these systems requires a quality assurance and quality control process to supplement. And so as we build up the scale and we get to a point where, we have the capacity to produce high quality deliverables across all fronts, IEPs and otherwise, that we have equally robust quality assurance, quality control process. And so it starts off with sampling, then it gets more robust, then you look at, and so all of those are incorporated in the initiative already that we've been working through since February. And so I think what you're going to begin to see is a lot more of that come into play now as we've stabilized the evaluation kind of trend line, a bit, for lack of a better word.
Okay, thank you. All right, Vice President Foster.
So in all my work in schools and with kids and thinking about student achievement, I've always came at some point to think in terms of gentle reforms that get us nowhere versus transformation. And that often what we do is we get these like little incremental increases over time that actually is not getting us somewhere. And that with the right systems in place and with the right folk and the right investment of resources, you'll get off of the hamster wheel of just the little bitty bits that don't get you anywhere or, project out to get you there in 2099 or something. And what you see is transformation, and then the transformation is shockingly fast coming. So for my standpoint, I'm really excited and so proud and pleased because I feel that thing that I always look for, which is transformation. And I feel that this is a transformational moment. Now, it doesn't feel like transformation when you've been working on it steadily for a time, but you've hit stride, you're resource-backed, teams are in place, things are going seemingly not just seemingly, they're going in the right direction. Can we pull up slide number 5? This was the evaluation progress comparison for spring, summer through September. So I understand this was prepared for a moment as we were in conversation with TEA. I'd be interested in just seeing a whole year. And where I'm going is I kind of want to learn something tonight. I see slopes following each other in 22, 23, dips and slopes like that are kind of going together, and then I see points of massive divergence. And I imagine that where the slopes match, it has something to do with the sort of life cycle of the school year, maybe how evaluations come, when they appear, that sort of thing. And I imagine that where they diverge dramatically, those are sort of a graphic embodiment of strategic intervention. So can you help me understand the slope a little bit, like why March is a low and then it all goes together, and then, I mean, they follow really closely, 22 and 23, or is that just coincidence?
Yeah, through the completed evaluations, right, there is some ebb and flow, if you will, in that. And so I think the most pronounced one that I can speak to, and particularly in the summer, when you kind of look at that, I mean, like huge, that one is like a huge difference there. I was new to that role last June. I started last June, and the team was working very hard on like doing the work in those evaluation clinics were happening. I was just that, and one of the things that honestly, putting into place tracking and business systems and principles, and being able to strategically see where you completed testing, Dr. Foster, school psychologist, if you will, but yet we don't have reporting. You're not progressing in terms of that. So we actually had gaps in terms of getting the return on those, and did substantially more. We created dashboards and workflows not only of when someone was assessed, but then what was a relative time period for a robust report to be written. That was not done the prior year. And so then they would kind of get away from us and away from us. And then it was, and at the same time, our team was still trying to work off of spreadsheets and other components. So to the extent, I mean, those are real things. And that's why you likewise start to see the trends. I think we put the dashboard got into place finally, like in mid-February, I think it was, in terms of some of our tracking. These are just where we have, there are certain things. When you look at March, of course, you have spring break in there. And we weren't as successful in March at bringing in, we had some, we do have evaluation clinics, but the number of people are like, I gave you my Thanksgiving and my Christmas, and I'm going to go ahead and take a spring break as a contractor, so those are the kinds of factors. We could probably peel it back a bit more, but there is sort of an ebb and flow. You'll start to see an uptick even on the inflow when we do screeners for students at certain points in the year, and then they're like, well, that could be a suspected disability. Is it a marker for dyslexia? And then we go through those processes. So we do see those things, and they're not entirely correlated to those pieces in the systems, but those do sort of point to there are systemic things that are happening. Coming into place. Now, when you look at January, you're likewise compiling any and all of those 2 weeks of testing that we had in December, that we have gotten better and better at this year. I mean, I don't know what they did the year, that January there would have been that year, prior, and then where we were I was here last December, and the team was really, felt like they were starting to get the resources to set those things in place, and let's go, and not with urgency in the sense of not with intention, but really trying to see, can we show that progress? So I don't know if that fully answered your question, but those are some of the related components that at least I could speak to.
No, that's helpful, and it's interesting. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, Trustee Foster, something that's interesting when you look at these trend lines is, the trend lines from January through July represent essentially the same number of LSSPs and diagnosticians, right? I mean, there's some adjustment, but generally speaking, the significant increase, right, to 74 didn't really occur until the summer when they came under contract after July 1, right? And so what you're seeing, I think that difference really being is an improvement in systems, right, organizational work. And so what's really going to be fascinating is a year from now, kind of comparing what that really looks like. These trend lines have really been completed with the existing, well, I'll say prior to July 1, 2023, kind of bench, for lack of a better word, capacity. So it should be very telling and very informative moving
And
forward.
then likewise, you all haven't relented. We couldn't and haven't on parallel, this, not the long-term plan, but if we had gaps with contracted team and our evaluation team, so it wasn't a trade-off, because it would have been something they couldn't have managed to continue to sustain that momentum collectively. So those are the types of investments that we knew if we could set up times we had locations and times for evaluations and teams, we could resource it. And that's what the team did. We tracked every missed appointment, every phone call. I remember Trustee Zapata giving me recommendations on that probably last November on some things, but we didn't have quite all the systems in place to be able to. When you don't know what's going on with your engine, it's not that you don't know how to drive a car, but you have to be able to look and say, oh, it's a gas issue, or it's an oil issue, or it's a this issue. Then people who know how to do that can make the right strategic decisions rather than it becomes the enormity of it, and you can't quite figure your way out of the next steps. So we've been really trying to apply those things, and fortunately, we're seeing those trends reflect that accordingly.
It's exciting. This item, of course, scorecard item, 9 and 10. It's focusing on evaluation, and yet, I had reviewed this earlier, and I had 3 questions I wanted to ask, and it was amazing that Trustee Hunter and Trustee Gonzalez we all seem to be going in the same direction, which is like next steps. But to tie it into effective provision of services beyond, there's an interesting reality here when it comes to resource investment. So we passed a budget, we've invested, and we did a lot of stuff even previous to the budget to find the spare change, to invest. That was a piece of the puzzle. As we get out of this, and I realize I'm prodding you to think can we just be in this moment for a minute? But I'm actually thinking about the next moment, which does have to do with the idea that when we get out of these past dues, that means more folk proportionally are where they're supposed to be, quote unquote, in the system, which sort of commonsensically, and I don't know if I'm thinking about this correctly, seems to be more demands on the system in terms of the ARD meetings, in terms of the IEPs and the faithful implementation. So it seems like the stress will move down the line, if that makes sense. And like I said, you probably just, can we just like get our past dues to zero first? But I'm thinking, okay, one of the things about transformation, there's like an accelerant here, where you all are making this crazy, amazing progress, and I'm already going, okay, then tomorrow, are we ready for what comes? And again, and I think it becomes a question that can be put back to the board. What would the resource shift need to look like so that we've invested so much in evaluations, but now our past dues are zero and our in timeline, that's probably going to be a lower number too, because things just are moving through this system at a steady pace. So it looks like your head nods tell me you know where I'm going. Help me understand about the next steps and what you would need from a resource standpoint. What's the shift look like?
Those are really critical questions, and I want to thank I want to thank and give praise to Interim Superintendent Segura and to Chief Ramos, Chief Hosick, because as you guys were going into the budgeting cycle, had to sit with them last spring, I don't know, April, after we had already released BTOs, or budgets to campuses. And we said, let's just do the math here. If we are going to have a general qualify, do not qualify rate, and these are estimates, right? And we're looking at each of the individual campuses, and we're looking at how they're currently staffed and not knowing every individual needs of students. And that's where we asked and said, we need an infusion of at least 50 teacher allocations. So 50 teacher allocations were added to the budget May, June? May, June. Special education teacher evaluation, teachers were added to the budget May, June. We've likewise been working with them around, it was kind of quiet, but through the leveling process that we experienced where we needed to infuse additional folks in terms of paraeducators and assistants. And we are continually examining that as we're growing. Where we're seeing some additional pinch, I see is that we have, there's sort of two folds, right? When you gotta address where you are, and you gotta also clean up your mess, to be honest with you. So under IDEA and under the laws, people are afforded, if they have a delayed evaluation, an opportunity to discuss compensatory services. So who provides that? Well, our teachers provide that. Our related service providers, speech pathologists provide that. So that isn't lost on us either, because they likewise are needing to make sure that we address those compensatory services, and then we have to carefully examine their ratios because they are growing, particularly around related services coming in, and also around counseling as a related service, which we talked about some of the mental health components, and some of which are very aligned for some students in terms of area of eligibility or disability. So all of those factors are coming into play, and we need to examine that. We likewise receive funding to be able to provide supplemental pay. It's called functional pay now. I think they wanted to change the language on me to see if I was still paying attention. Thank you, Chief Ramos, and ERP. But we provide additional, basically supplemental pay for people who are also crafting, if it's additional time for IEP development. We had summer ARDs, so we had to likewise build that capacity because it would have been just so, it is still so much, because you turn on that spigot, and then as soon as that evaluation finishes, that 30-day timeline happens for the teacher and the campus to be ready to convene. And so we are noticing where some of those pinch points are in our system and working to address them. To likewise, there are folks who want to do some additional IEP development and support, because they're committed, but likewise, we can afford them some additional compensation to be able to assist, particularly people who are maybe more novice or overwhelmed with what the inflow is, for lack of a better description. And then we're working to try and position staff there. So we're definitely going to need to look at Across the country, you're seeing trends and increases with students being identified for services. You're seeing it across the country. You're certainly seeing it in the state of Texas, and we're likewise reflecting that in Austin ISD. So whereas we've been about 12.3%, which there was a period of time our state was just over 8-point-something%, that's increasing. We will be likewise thinking about where we need to build capacity with dyslexia interventionists and other folks under special education providing that level of support. So that's probably too generalized. I should have had like a pointed response and answer, but you're absolutely right that we need to, the word accelerant is absolutely what we have to address as a system. So we've tried to preemptively address a number of those things, but overall as a system, we'll be here in the next budget cycle and likewise trying to be competitive and making sure that we have the right system in place to support our students.
I deeply appreciate your tick points there or not. I really appreciate your answer because what I'm hearing is, we're on this. This is part of what we're thinking about. And, as another point of transformation, what if we delivered SPED services excellently, consistently, and that was where we got to? And that's where I'd love for us to be because we've reimagined, and I mean the nation has reimagined special education, right, in terms of inclusion, in terms of what is being identified, and just how we think through the diversity of our children, the diversity of our kids, and how we serve kids in the classroom. So I think we absolutely have to be thinking about this, and it feels like the moment for you all to be supported doing what you are doing, your whole team up and down the line, and it feels like the moment where with thoughtful planning, you make a challenging ask of the board, and that we have to figure out how to find change in the couch and do what we need to do to be supportive. And then, of course, the Debbie Downer note is that we operate within the constraints provided by an oppressive state. And so we are committed to excellence within the context of giving half of our money away and hoping that it's spent well and knowing that it's probably not. Editorial note over. The real note is thank you. And we will support you however we can.
Thank you, Vice President Foster. So we'll do our second round now. Hunter Gonzalez, this side. Trustee Zapata, any comments? Okay, Trustee Boswell.
I'd like to know, I'm just kidding.
Thank you, appreciate it. And Trustee Foster, to your point about recapture, I will add a $2.3 billion difference in what the state offers for special education and what our districts spend. And our share of that is about $80 million this year. So important to note that and we're doing a lot with a little. So I'm really appreciative of our staff. I have a question, two questions. One is about, and you touched on it, Dr. Robinette, the work with our parents and families. And I know you've been doing a lot of work to bring families along. And I think special education is, all education should be a partnership between our families and our schools, and special education in very specific ways must be a partnership between families and schools. And I know that getting through compliance, the mandatory things, the evaluations, the reevaluations, the creation of the system requires work with the family. And I know that part of our TEA order is to strengthen the systems for working with families. And I'm wondering, I know your department began doing that long before the order, and I'm really curious to see if you're seeing payoff in terms of addressing the needs of students through evaluations, through reevaluations, and being in compliance, and through having families who really understand the system and can be allies and partners in that work in the way that it's intended.
So, several things are in place. Thank you for that question, Trustee Boswell. And number one, I'm trying to look at you and the trustees here in front of me. So
you can look at them.
I don't know, because I'm like, she can't see me looking at her. A number of things. We took a different approach in working with our Office of Community Engagement, and in our team, our specialist team is built around really coaching and support. To be honest with you, not that we haven't faced some of that this year, but in a very different way. Our specialists in the prior year were serving as substitutes and covering classes where we had just substantial vacancies. And so that impacts our ability to coach up teachers and do outreach to parents, right? It's just systemic. So our specialists are a part of building up that, feathering in and building up that capacity with our parents. We've initiated and have held watch parties in partnership with our parent support specialists for the ABCs of IEPs. So when that new evaluation is completed, an initial evaluation, we literally are doing an offer in communication with parents. We're building capacity with our principals and assistant principals and our case managers to let them know about that. And then we're also holding parent empower hours and pieces that have come from the community as well. A lot of it is just in partnership also side by side with parents. And so that's another reason we need our specialists to have more accessibility to not only coaching and supporting and developing teachers, but being a good point of contact for our parents and community as well. And so we've seen some good positive progress associated with that. We're trying to create additional resources and tools, and we're excited about where that can go in the future. Our actual what was is our recovery initiative, our special education initiative, had some robust components, and what was our former SEAC had some good feedback for us about how we could build out those components. That work is not going to stop, no matter, that's part of the work that's underway in partnership with our families. I also want to say that we leverage any and all opportunities to grow the capacity of our team in support of students with disabilities. And I think it's important that that's a narrative that we embrace. I know this isn't exactly your question, but if you would allow me, please, because we want to build that capacity in our principals, our assistant principals, our general education teachers, so that PTAs, everyone is thinking about how we're considering the needs of our students, all of our students first, right? Working from the margins to the center for our community. So our principals and assistant principals just yesterday were in training and development about developing high-quality IEPs and how do you actually begin to build upon parent engagement and communication, because it will never happen with a team of 2 or 4 or 6. It has to get capacity through the system. And we have well-intended people, myself included, but we still have a lot to learn, and that comes from listening, understanding laws, but also realizing that first and foremost, we need to create welcoming, conducive relationships that are bedrock to the entire process of building that capacity with families. So that was a big component of yesterday. Likewise, all of them will be a part of, as are we, around our committee management training and pieces that are all of those pieces will make us more enriched as a community, and they are thinking about how will they engage parents further. So yes, we'll do that as a department, but we did not arrive in this situation or in anything, whether it's good or bad, because it's strictly a departmental challenge. It is a system, opportunity, obligation, and challenge. And so our special education team members, we have a parent engagement component and involvement that was part of our training with our teachers on October 9th. They likewise will have a more deeper dive on their January 8th professional learning day as well. And from that, all of our campuses will be developing some additional action plans that are associated with that. That's not a burden or something done to us. That's an opportunity. So yes, we've been building that as a department. We're seeing some good, we're getting some good feedback. I think our first one had, we had a noon and an afternoon. There were 50 to 60 in each. That was like honestly unheard of for some of the things. But we likewise need to create more and more spaces, and we're cognizant of that for additional listening and touch points and feedback. And fortunately, some folks will come and speak here, and some folks approach us separately and say, we are seeing some good things, and we're feeling those things. And we want to make that not the exception, but we want to make that the rule for our system overall.
Thank you so much for all of that. Really appreciate hearing that. And then my second question is really looking ahead to budgeting. And I know that the percentage of students who receive special education services is not the same at every campus. We have, dips and valleys and a really lumpy pattern. And I know the intensity of services that students receive the mix is different on different campuses. And I know one approach to budgeting that some people advocate for is an intensity of service model rather than a straight number of student model. And wondering if that's something that you might be bringing to us and what we need to be thinking about looking ahead to that.
So part of the Stetson step-by-step inclusive practice model is actually very student-centered staffing. So we did do general projections. You'll see ratios, et cetera, that are built into the budgeting model. But then we sat together and we provided, in partnership, our coordinators went out and observed and partnered with those technical assistance days where they built the actual schedules around the students in front of them, right? Every campus did that around the minutes, what was required, what's the intensity of the student needs. So that is actually a very student-centric approach. It's not like a ratio or a calculation, but it's literally reviewing not only IEP services minutes, but also looking at where's the appropriate clustering of students, where do we need to look about dual language versus an English-only setting, if you will. So all of those myriad of factors were considered, and then we looked at where we were with the ratios that were part of general projections, and then we go to actuals, and where we needed to make any of those adjustments. We plan for that to be a part of that process. There are some forms associated with that called Form 1 and Form 2, looking at the individual needs of students. Where can we meet those students' needs with the appropriate supports? Always looking to the extent possible in a generalized setting with supports. And so that's, it's not like a calculation. It's very student IEPI-centric, if you will, in that development. And that has been, that was actually part of the recommendations in the report, and we've seen a strong yield on that thus far. But always we have new students coming in that we didn't know about in the spring. So we have to make that an ongoing process throughout, and those touch points will be continuing throughout this year and certainly as part of the budgeting cycle this upcoming year as well.
Okay, fantastic. I didn't know we had built that in already. So that's really helpful to know. I'm glad with that nuance. So thank you for that information.
Thank you. Let's see, trustees, anything else on the side? This side? All right. Well, thank you. Really appreciate that. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Superintendent, did you want to say something?
Oh, just before we break on the agenda item, or on the item, wanted to communicate to our community and to the trustees and to all of our staff that we did start the onboarding process for our monitors. We had a kickoff meeting this afternoon, feels like this morning. And we'll be well underway in that process. And so they'll be engaged and within the special education department as early as next week. So we could expect them to attend a board meeting near you to provide an introduction. And so just want to let you all know that that work has started.
Thank you very much. Okay. So thank you all. That was really very informative.
Was that what's anticipated? Was that the target?
The target, I think, was 75 minutes on here, but but it's good stuff. You all had a lot to report. Okay, so now this ends the section on the information reports from the administration, and at this time we will now move into the preview of the upcoming regular board agendas. This will allow the public and trustees the opportunity to review the agenda items that will be considered for a vote at the next regular board meeting, which will be next Thursday, right? Because many of us are going to be going to various conferences the following Thursday. So AISD staff is available to answer any questions. for tonight's preview. We will begin tonight with item 8, which is the agenda preview for upcoming academics and curriculum items. Trustees, are there any questions on these items? Nope. Okay. The next is Section 9, Board Administration. Okay, so this, yeah, we're actually pulling that for next month, and that one's related to the approval for the LSG governance implementation timeline. So the next section is 10, Business and Finance. Trustees, are there any questions on these items? Nope. Okay, thank you. Next, we have Section 11, Human Resources. Trustees, any questions on these items? Okay. Thanks. Item 12 is really related to policy, and I believe Secretary Boswell has a question on that.
Yes, I see that the recommendation is to take no action. I know our current policy allows chaplains, just as it allows anyone else, to come into our campuses to volunteer, as you know, I believe it should be, and as the Constitution requires. So I think no change in that is the right choice, but I do think I would like to consider as a board adding some nuance to that decision. And really stating explicitly that we decline to expand the option for people who are qualified as chaplains, but not as counselors, as other things, to take those positions of salaried professional or paraprofessional employees. That a chaplain is not in Austin ISD a qualification to be a school counselor, some of the other roles that are contemplated by this legislation. And Round Rock, you passed a resolution recently that I think could serve as a model for us. So I would love, before we bring it back next week, to really think about adding some nuance to that and drawing some lines. I know we had a call about that as well, but I really agree that we need to be really explicit about where that's a role and where it's not, and would propose that we go a little farther.
Thank you. Did you want to say anything to that? Yes, Vice President Foster.
So thank you, Trustee Boswell, for bringing this up. I was also going to flag this one. So Senate Bill 763 says in part, a school district, or just so folks know what we're talking about, a school district may employ or accept as a volunteer a chaplain to provide support services and programs for students as assigned by the Board of Trustees or the governing body of the school. A chaplain employed or volunteering is not required to be certified by the State Board for Education certification. I know Trustee Boswell watches this really closely, and other folks have watched, and we saw the bill loosen up and become less toxic and less obnoxious. And yet it still feels to me to be sort of something that's going to trend in a certain direction, and I'm incredibly wary of it. I think it's worth pointing out that this is a permissive law versus a mandatory, so it's not compelling us to do anything. It's rather saying you are allowed to. We have policies in place. Our policies work for us. This is another example of the state reaching its hands in where it really just doesn't have any business. No action is one thing, but I actually I think that Trustee Boswell's solution is elegant, apt, and fits our community to offer a little more nuance as to a declaration of our values. I have absolutely no problem with a chaplain being in a school in a role if they're certified to be in a role. Somebody might be a lawyer and a doctor. Somebody might be a chaplain and a school psychologist. So I have nothing against a chaplain being in a role. I have everything against someone being in a role for which they are not certified or qualified. And I feel like this is, well, first of all, it's a poison pill. It was designed to cause fractions across the state and school boards. And it's also the first attempt at something that's going to keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. And I'm just tired of all this. And so I would like to state our values clearly And so in this case, it just means offering a little bit of nuance. So I actually echo Trustee Boswell's sentiment.
Thank you, Vice President Foster. Trustee Hunter?
Quickly, I concur. And those of you who may not be familiar, Austin ISD and I personally welcome a chaplain, imam, rabbi, pastor, or priest to volunteer in our schools. We have a mechanism for that. It is called Austin Partners in Education. We would love for you to volunteer as a mentor, a math tutor. So those are great. And to repeat what Kevin Foster, Secretary, I'm gonna give you a new job too. Vice President Foster said, exactly, your vocation is not what would keep you out. Like if you're qualified, we would definitely want you working with our students in that manner, whatever your other qualifications are. But again, whomever would like to volunteer, we welcome volunteers to work with our students, to mentor them, and you can do that through Austin Partners in Education.
Thank you. Trustee Gonzalez, any comments on this? This side of the dais, any comments? Yeah, you're good. Okay. All right. I'll just say I also would like to sort of second or, support what my fellow trustees have said. I think we do need to be very clear about where we stand on this. And I agree with what both Trustees Boswell and Foster said. So thank you. So I guess I should follow up and ask the administration, will you all propose some alternative language?
Yeah, I'll work with Jacob and kind of based on the feedback and based on maybe some recommendations identified by trustees as potential policies to pull from, recommend some slight modifications, for lack of a better word.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so moving on, the next is section 13, other. So trustees, any questions on these items? Nope. Okay. All right, well, thank you. This will end our regular agenda preview. We will now recess the open meeting. Was that applause? Oh my God. We will now recess the open meeting at 9:01 p.m. and move to executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code sections 551.074, 551.072, 551.073, 551.087, 551.076, I'm not done yet, 551.0821, and 551.071. When we are finished with executive session, we will briefly return to the open session to formally adjourn the meeting. The adjournment will be recorded and be included in all replays of tonight's meeting. So thank you for joining us and have a great evening. Okay, we will now reconvene the open meeting at 11:34 p.m. Trustee Foster, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, having a motion by Trustee Foster and a second by Trustee Zapata to adjourn. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned at 11:35 p.m. Thank you.